Chapter 195. Xiao Qixi knew that he was about to fall into a temporary deep sleep when a familiar feeling of disorientation came from the deepest part of his consciousness. However, he had just lived a happy life, and he treated this deep sleep as a long sleep. He was already mentally prepared that he would never wake up again. Therefore, he told Otis a lot of things. For example, he told Otis that they might not be able to wake up, and that Otis had to treat him better in the last moments of his life. He told Otis to kiss and hug him, and so on. When one grows old, one becomes a child. Yilashanda was acting coquettishly again. However, he was like a child most of the time. Only when Ao Daisai needed his support would he wake up like Godzilla. As for what Godzilla was, Ao Daisai, who had watched the series, of course knew. He expressed that it was very childish. There was no such monster as Godzilla in the world. Yilashanda argued with him until his face turned red. He said loudly that there was, but the era of the giant beasts had passed a long time ago. It was in terms of billions of years. This was the real history of the Earth. However, these were all conclusions drawn by humans. In fact, it did not seem to affect Ao Daisai. He was more concerned about his partner in front of him. Even if the other party did not say anything, he would still kiss and hug his beloved little cutie every day. Even if the other party's feathers were no longer dazzling and the once gorgeous tail feathers had become sparse. Ao Daisai was afraid that he would be sad. He said that he looked good like this too. Xiao Qixi was not sad at all. Aging was a natural phenomenon. At this point in time, he was not concerned about his appearance at all. If he wanted to talk about being narcissistic, he had had enough of it over the years. Who else in the world was prettier than him? He only cared about the other party. He looked very healthy, but he had no attachment to this world. Other than letting the other party kiss and hug him, he had no reason to say anything else. Sometimes, Xiao Qixi would wonder what the world had given Ao Daisai. Was it really worth it? He lay on his chest and asked softly, Ao Daisai, do you still want to wake up? Don't you feel tired? In this world, other than giving Ao Daisai a lazy little bear, it seemed that there was really nothing worth nostalgia for. Ao Daisai stared at him fiercely. His deep eyes were particularly serious. I want to wake up again. Without hesitation, he was very determined. At the same time, he was a little puzzled. How could it be tiring to live with the little bear? Every day was happy. Are you tired? Ao Daisai asked Xiao. Well, he seemed to be thinking, what if the little bear's wishes were conflicting with his own? I'm not tired. Xiao Qixi quickly shook her head. Of course, she was not tired. She also wanted to spend a long time with Otis. However, he had to remind Otis, sob, we might not wake up again. You have to be mentally prepared. Sob. Ao Daisai's mood was very disturbed by him. He couldn't sleep while he loved him. Later, Xiao Qixi found out that if he really had a premonition that there would be no afterlife, he would never have said these things to Ao Daisai. He would rather cry to death than hide this fact. Falling into the darkness, they suffered a lot of memories and were nourished by sleep. In the process, no one knew how long they slept or what happened in the middle. They just passively accepted everything, and there were very few things that they could control. But compared to ordinary life, it seemed that they were already standing in the VIP seat of Insight World. They were destined to see more truth than other ordinary life. To say the least, they were still lucky. What was even more fortunate was that they still had a choice. Deep in their souls, they seemed to perceive that the ecological environment of the next world was very barbaric. If they chose to wake up, they would have to face many problems bravely. A natural living environment, strong competitors, and natural disasters that came from time to time. What kind of world was this? Xiao Qixi sighed and was confused, but he didn't retreat because of this. He struggled firmly to wake up. But this kind of obstruction wasn't over. The invisible pushing hand seemed to become stingy and was no longer so generous to him. Reincarnating into a highly intelligent creature was a thing of the past. Next, they should be deprived of the advantage of conversation. That's it. Xiao Qixi didn't even blink. No, he couldn't blink now even if he wanted to, because he was just a mass of consciousness, not a physical body. So what if he was deprived of the advantage of conversation? It was just a small matter. After so many years of being together, even if there was no spiritual communication, he and Ao Daisai would not be in a predicament of not being able to communicate. After Qiao Qishi's persistence, the obstruction of fate seemed to have come to an end. Soon, he heard his own heartbeat. 65 million years ago on Earth, this period was called the Late Cretaceous period, which was the Mesozoic era of Earth's history. At that time, the climate on Earth was warm and humid, similar to the climate of today's tropical rainforests, which was very suitable for the growth of vegetation. In addition to the ferns and palms that lived on Earth very early on, flowering plants and fruiting plants began to appear during this period. The vegetation was almost the same as today, which meant that mammals began to appear. However, the dominant species on Earth at that time were still dinosaurs. It could be said that the Late Cretaceous period was the heyday of dinosaurs, so it was also called the Age of Dinosaurs. However, the Late Cretaceous period was also the end of the dinosaurs. Almost at the peak of the dinosaurs, a natural disaster suddenly came to the surface, exterminating 75% of the animals and plants on Earth at that time. History was called the Paleogene Extinction Event. At this moment, the Cretaceous extinction event hadn't come yet, and the time unit of the disaster was still hundreds of thousands of years. After hundreds of millions of years of peaceful development, the overlords of the land had evolved into the masters of Earth, and they were everywhere. There were pterosaurs that could fly in the sky, dragons that could swim in the water, and there was no need to mention the dinosaurs on Earth. Some ate meat, some were vegetarian, some weighed 40 tons, and some were as small as a few kilograms. They stayed in the environment they were adapted to and lived freely. Vegetarians had an endless supply of plants to eat, and carnivores never lacked targets to hunt. However, this was not the whole picture of life. Even the most powerful dinosaur had something that it was afraid of. In addition to natural enemies, they had to face the occasional earthquake, tsunami, and volcanic eruption. The average dinosaur lived between 75 to 300 years old, and the longer they lived, the greater the chance of encountering such dangerous events. At this time, the continental plates weren't as peaceful as they were in the new era, and earthquakes and volcanic eruptions were common. So every dinosaur from birth to death more or less experienced some dangers. Of course, these could be avoided as long as their premonition was strong enough and they ran fast enough. Among them, there were definitely some dinosaurs who weren't so lucky. Not only did they not run away from the dangers, but as they grew older, they didn't know when they would suddenly become a meal on the plate of a carnivore. The daily lives of these dinosaurs could be roughly guessed by the scientists of later generations through the study of fossils, but many questions were still a mystery. For example, was the cause of the extinction of the dinosaurs really due to an asteroid hitting Earth? Did the dinosaurs go extinct all of a sudden? Was the strongest king of the dinosaur era really the Tyrannosaurus Rex? Did the Tyrannosaurus Rex really exist? Or was it an accident during the development of the Tyrannosaurus Rex? Also, was the Sky Tyrannosaurus really that powerful? Did people overestimate its strength? If this was the first question that humans wanted to understand about the dinosaurs, then there was another question that even the superhumans of the future era were full of interest. That was, could the era of the Ultralisk be replicated? The only Ultralisk era that appeared in history was an era that couldn't be replicated. It was full of mystery. Mu Chang's superhumans, even if they listed the surface of the Earth, the atmosphere, the sun, and even the entire Milky Way during the Ultralisk era, knew all the conditions for the creation of the Ultralisk, they still couldn't replicate the Mesozoic era. They could only temporarily give up on this project until the appearance of the Transcendents. The so-called Transcendents were quite cumbersome to explain. To put it simply, Transcendents could transcend the torrent of time and appear as objects in a world that didn't belong to them. It could also be said that they didn't appear in this world, but their thoughts did. However, there was no data that could prove that the world they had been to was real. Other than their feelings and everything they perceived, everything else was illusory. This was the Transcendence. The superhumans of the future world sent two strong and knowledgeable scientists to complete this dangerous task. They focused on the time and place in South America 65 million years ago, which was the famous Hell Creek Valley in the history of the dinosaurs. Later, people made a list of the Hell Creek group for this area during this period, including sea, land, air, animals, and so on. The reason why the Hell Creek group was famous in the past and the future was because the three famous giants of the Cretaceous era lived in this group. They were the Tyrannosaurus rex, the Triceratops, and the Ankylosaurus rex. It seemed that even elementary school students had heard of their names. If you wanted to tell the story of the dinosaurs, you couldn't avoid these three giants no matter what. However, very few people knew about their true appearance and what their lives were like. There were too many rumors that gradually drowned out the true faces of the three giants. First of all, the appearance of the Tyrannosaurus rex. It was indeed tall and mighty in people's impression, but in fact, before the age of 20, it was covered with a layer of fluff from head to tail, which only disappeared when it reached adulthood. Therefore, if it encountered a Tyrannosaurus rex on the road, it meant that it was still young and not as fierce as an adult Tyrannosaurus rex. Maybe it would be able to escape with a little trick. Also, the Tyrannosaurus rex's small and short hands were really not used to act cute. In fact, their hands were very muscular and could be used to clamp prey and also to balance the body. For example, if it encountered an egg one day and didn't want to eat it temporarily, it could use its small and short hands to pick up the egg and eat it on the road. Also, although the Triceratops was powerful, it was actually the staple food of the Tyrannosaurus rex. Because on this land, the Tyrannosaurus rex accounted for 15% of the population, and the Triceratops accounted for 40%. The carnivorous Tyrannosaurus rex, of course, would first harm the Triceratops that could be seen everywhere. The other protagonist, the Ankylosaurus, was very few in number. Its nickname in the Hell Creek group was the Tank. It had super sturdy armor and a super low chassis, with a big hammer on its tail. In many fictional movies, the Ankylosaurus used its big hammer to hammer the Tyrannosaurus rex into a daze. This was completely fictional, because no matter how high the Ankylosaurus tail was, it could only hit the Tyrannosaurus rex's knee. To make an analogy, it was like a corgi versus a husky. Then why was it able to become the third brother of the Hell Creek group when its chassis was so low? Because it was very defensive and weighed 2 tons. As long as it was not lifted up and exposed its soft belly, it could always find a chance to counterattack. Even the Tyrannosaurus rex rarely provoked such a living tank that could attack and defend. Instead of wasting effort to attack the Ankylosaurus, it was better to attack the Triceratops that could be seen everywhere. After fully understanding this known knowledge, the two scientists sent by the superhumans began to explore the South American continent of ancient Earth. At this time, the land that was originally connected between the major plates had just been submerged by the rising sea level. The map was almost showing the appearance of the new era. This meant that the footprints of the dinosaurs had been limited. They were no longer as chaotic as before the rising sea level. The first thing the two superhumans saw was an open plain. The land was covered with tall grass. It seemed that it had just rained. The rainwater had almost drowned half of the grass. However, this was nothing to the giant beasts. They were about 3 meters tall and weighed 6 to 7 tons. The water level only covered their feet as they walked among the grass. This group of giant beasts that like to live in groups was the Triceratops. As vegetarians, they were peacefully scattered everywhere and nibbled on the plants. Rich vegetation covered the land. The broad-leaved forest in the distance was shrouded in fog after the rain. A few tall mountains were emitting faint white smoke. It was not difficult to see that there was an active volcanic crater. The humans who saw this scene could barely move. They would definitely doubt the authenticity of what they were seeing. However, the hot wind blowing on their faces told them that everything was real. The superhumans did not bring their bodies, but they could still use their senses. In other words, if a Tyrannosaurus rex suddenly appeared and bit them, they would still feel pain. However, they would not die because of it. The peaceful scene was suddenly broken by the deep roars of the Triceratops. This kind of long and penetrating ancient cry tortured the eardrums of the humans. The sound system of the dinosaurs was very delicate and developed. Scientists even thought that they had their own unique communication language. This was not surprising. Many ordinary animals had it. The principle might not be that profound. They just used the length of the sound to express some situation. For example, right now, the Triceratops might have sensed danger. The atmosphere of the entire group became tense and chaotic. Then, the scattered Triceratops at the edge of the group moved closer to the center. It seemed that this was the last measure they took to deal with the danger. As long as everyone gathered together, even a Tyrannosaurus Rex would have to think twice. Xiao Qixi, who had just woken up, was also disturbed by the deep roars of the Triceratops. The first thing he saw when he woke up was a tree not far away. According to the height of the tree, he was smart enough to calculate his current height. He was about 1.7 meters. Wow, I am a giant beast in this life. The author has something to say. Cub, you're the shortest. He is the third brother, Jianlong QAQ. Chapter 196. The number of animals on land that could reach such heights could be counted on one hand, so it was not surprising that Xiao Qixi thought he was a large beast. He could not wait to find out what he was, but then his second sense came to him. It was about 30 degrees Celsius, a little stuffy. He moved his hands and feet submerged in the shallow water. Or rather, his claws, hooves, whatever. After hearing the sound of water, Xiao Qixi gave up on looking for a reference point on land. His gaze quickly shifted to his forelimbs. Lowering his head was not a big deal. A rather clear reflection immediately came into view. God, what is this? It was the face of an animal, but Xiao Qixi raised his paw and swore that he did not have any impression of this animal in his mind. How amazing was this? He loved to watch animal shows, and he believed that he could recognize most animals, except for the animals below 2,000 meters under the sea. Because he was so surprised, Xiao Qixi saw his self on the surface of the water suddenly widen his eyes, which made the animal face look even cuter. How should he describe this unfamiliar face? Overall, it was a round face with a chin and horns that looked like shields growing from his forehead. It was not exaggerated, and it even looked like it was just for decoration. Even the horns of the goat were sharper and more useful than the horns on his head. In terms of appearance, Xiao Qixi thought that he was very handsome in the New World. He was very much in line with the aesthetic standards of a boy, the kind that looked very powerful. If only his facial lines were stronger, it would be perfect. After admiring her cool and handsome face, Xiao Qixi felt as if she was walking on cotton. She slowly turned her body and turned her head, hoping to see how her body looked like, so that she could judge what kind of person she was now. When he tilted his head, he was instantly dumbfounded and stared blankly at his reflection on the surface of the water. At first glance, Xiao Qixi thought that he was an enlarged version of a hedgehog. The difference was that he did not have thorns, only armor. There was also a tail with bone spikes attached to it. Xiao Qixi moved it and confirmed that it was indeed her tail. God, New World, he had a tail with a hammer. This style was a little familiar. He had definitely seen it somewhere before, but he just couldn't remember where. The dazed little bear, Joe, waved his hammer tail up and down as his mind wandered. After an unknown amount of time, a series of earth-shaking movements pulled his attention back to reality. It might be an exaggeration to say that the earth was shaking, but how should it be said? Even if a group of elephants passed by, it wouldn't cause such an effect. What was going on? Xiao Qixi had to give up thinking about what kind of animal he was for the time being. He looked up and saw through a patch of sparse grass. What he saw made him freeze in place again. It was a group of Triceratops running in his direction. Given that Triceratops' appearance was too easy to recognize, even people who were not familiar with dinosaurs could guess it with a little thought. Xiao Qixi was surprised not because she saw a group of Triceratops, but because if this was the world of dinosaurs, then her identity was obvious. F*CK, it's an armor dragon, right? A new life had come to the age of dinosaurs. Xiao Qixi hadn't recalled any professional knowledge in several lifetimes. At this moment, three words popped up in his mind: Cretaceous period. As a student of geology, of course, he knew about the Cretaceous period. At that time, they mainly understood the geological layers of the Cretaceous period and learned the knowledge of the formation of these geological layers. The reason why the Cretaceous period was named Cretaceous period was because the geological deposits of this era were mainly formed by a layer of white minerals. These white minerals were originally the armor of animals. Xiao Qixi really didn't know much about dinosaurs. He only knew that the fifth extinction was at the end of the Cretaceous period. Xiao Qixi felt that he shouldn't be so miserable. He just happened to be reincarnated at the historical moment when the planet hit the Earth. Obviously, now was not the time to think about this. He looked at the situation in front of him nervously, wanting to know why the Triceratops were so flustered. Because he was now at the height of an adult's vision, the range he could see was limited. After looking for a long time, he could only see the Triceratops getting closer and closer. Finally, they whistled by not far in front of him. It can't be an earthquake, right? That's too unlucky. It's an earthquake. Xiao Qixi quietly lay on the ground for a long time. He only felt the movement of the Triceratops, but he didn't feel the precursor of an earthquake. As sharp as he was more or less confident in his judgment. Using the elimination method, if it wasn't a natural disaster, then it was a Tyrannosaurus Rex hunting. Tyrannosaurus Rex? When these three words popped up in her mind, Xiao Qixi could only think of the Jurassic Park movie plot where the ferocious Tyrannosaurus Rex hunted down vegetarian dinosaurs. Wait a minute, the Ankylosaurus Rex seems to be a vegetarian dinosaur. Xiao Qixi. Run. Even though there was no sign of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, Xiao Qixi, who had always been careful, began to run with his thick and short limbs. Especially now that Ao Daisai wasn't by his side, he had to protect his own safety. He didn't want to become the Tyrannosaurus Rex's snack before he even saw Ao Daisai. When he saw the Triceratops running in front of him just now, Xiao Qixi felt that they ran quite valiantly and looked quite cool. He thought that as a dinosaur, he was also like them, running as fast as lightning. But unfortunately, he didn't run as fast as the wind, especially with the group of Triceratops as a control group. Xiao Qixi had to admit that he didn't seem to be good at running in this life, and he got tired after running for a few seconds. Cack, how could this be? Wasn't it supposed to be an awesome beast? Why did it get tired after running 2 steps? It must be that the original owner of this body had eaten too much before. It's ridiculous. I don't understand why eating leaves can make me fat. Perseverance is the most important thing, but giving up is also easy. Xiao Qixi stopped running at the speed of a turtle and decided to escape this unknown disaster at his normal speed. If the Tyrannosaurus Rex dared to come over and eat him, he would use his sledgehammer to smash it flat. The two superhumans who witnessed this scene from a high place obviously confirmed their guess. They were not surprised to see that there were 2 Tyrannosaurus Rex at the end of the fleeing group. As a bipedal dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus Rex's speed was not fast among the dinosaurs. They were more inclined to sneak attacks when hunting. If they were discovered by prey, and the prey happened to be a sauropod dinosaur, that is, a 4-legged dinosaur, then it would be a long chase. A group of Triceratops may not be afraid of a lone Tyrannosaurus Rex, but if 2 Tyrannosaurus Rex appeared at the same time, it was enough to cause panic. The most terrifying existence of the Hell Creek group was not just for show. All the dinosaurs avoided them as if they were hungry devils, including the carnivorous acheron. Their size was considered small among the dinosaurs, and they fled up and down in groups in the forest. It also confirmed the speculation that the dinosaurs paid attention to all kinds of sounds when they were running away. This scene crossed time and space, and it was so classic and realistic that it was enough to shock the 2 researchers who were peeping through the time and space barrier. If they could, they would like to record all these scenes, but unfortunately, the current technology did not support it. They could only rely on their own memory, and when they returned, they would try their best to recover these scenes. holding their breath and watching. Suddenly, a figure was finally noticed by two pairs of peeping eyes. It was a slowly moving ankylosaurus. Because its identity was too special and rare, the two researchers focused their attention on the ankylosaurus. The full name of the ankylosaurus was Big Ankylosaurus. It was a little vegetarian tank in the Hell Creek group. Its temperament was a little gentle, and it could be said that it was almost aloof from worldly affairs. After all, with its speed, it was very difficult to cause trouble. From its size and light color, it could be judged that this ankylosaurus was very young, or even underage. The younger the ankylosaurus, the lighter the color of its body. Only when it grew up, some color would appear on its body. That was a symbol of charm. The light-colored ankylosaurus could not find a partner. In other words, the northeast coat that people did not like was fashionable during the dinosaur era. Now, the little ankylosaurus was still a little guy without charm. He walked alone on the road, tail swaying, as if he was not in a hurry at all. It was a sharp contrast to the group of fleeing triceratops nearby. How could it run so slowly? The kind superhumans were worried about the squirming little ankylosaurus. Although the hungry Tyrannosaurus rex was also very pitiful, for some reason, their eyes were attracted to the little ankylosaurus. They hoped that it would not be hurt. Xiao did not know that someone was looking at him, although it was a little embarrassing to say it. He was indeed sweating profusely as he strode forward. He was working very hard. As a powerful ankylosaurus, it was impossible for it to only have this little ability. Xiao felt that it should be because he had just arrived and was not used to his identity. As he walked, he suddenly felt that it was very tiring to lift the hammer with his tail. Why didn't he put it down? After hesitating for a second, Yulishanda put down the hammer without any burden of being an idol. It was much more comfortable to drag it along. His hammer was made of bone, so he did not feel any pain when dragging on the ground. Moreover, in this kind of hot weather, it was cooler for his tail to stay in the water. At this time, all the Triceratops passed him and walked forward. He heard two different footsteps, which were filled with an oppressive aura, approaching him. It must be the king of the Hell Creek group, Tyrannosaurus rex. Xiao heart was indescribably nervous. He even held his breath. At this moment, he felt that it did not matter if he crawled forward or not. If the other party noticed him, even if they were thousands of miles away, they would still come over and eat him. Forget it. He stopped his meaningless steps and hoped that the other party's target was always the group of Triceratops, and not him, the pitiful and helpless little ankylosaurus. In the animal kingdom, when some animals knew that they could not escape, they would pretend to be dead as a final struggle. After the little ankylosaurus stopped moving, he tilted his head slightly. As the sound of the huge monster stepping on the ground got closer and closer, his round eyes suddenly saw two figures as tall as a small mountain. This was still in the case of a long distance. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the Tyrannosaurus rex would be in the case of a close distance. The iconic sharp teeth, short forelimbs, huge body, and tail that balanced the body appeared in front of his eyes in real life. Not only did it cause a great shock to the scientists, even the former top geologist was unable to take his eyes off it. Roar! The escaping prey made the two Tyrannosaurus rex very angry. The roar from their throats spread over a radius of more than 10 kilometers. Xiao felt that his eardrums were shattered. Was this the advantage of being tall? If it was him, he would definitely not be able to make such a penetrating roar. The two furious Tyrannosaurus rex did not notice his existence. They only had eyes for the escaping Triceratops. After all, they were at a disadvantage in terms of speed. The Tyrannosaurus rex shook his head and sped up, quickly passing by the fish that was hiding nearby. Xiao breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his luck was still very good. In fact, even if the two Tyrannosaurus rex found him nearby, they would not necessarily come over to attack him. To put it nicely, it was because it was not worth it. To put it bluntly, it was because Papa, who had a big appetite, did not like him. After the crisis was over, Xiao immediately felt hungry. Usually, he would have a desire to eat meat. But now, when he saw the emerald green leaves in front of him, he actually felt that those tender green leaves should be very delicious. After being an animal for so long, this was the first time Xiao Qixi became a vegan animal. He quickly accepted the fact that he wanted to eat leaves. What was more annoying was that he was only 7 meters tall. The canopy of an ordinary tree was not less than 7 meters, so he could only eat short bushes and grass. Xiao Qixi sighed, lowered his head, and took a bite of the grass close to him. He found that it tasted good. When there was no danger and he did not have to worry about food, he began to miss Ao Daisai very much. The number of Ankylosaurus rex was relatively small, and they did not live in groups. He did not know where Ao Daisai was eating the grass now. Thinking of Ao Daisai, Xiao Qixi's heart was sweet. It was so good they still had a long life. The lifespan of dinosaurs was so long, he still had a long time to slowly find Ao Daisai. Speaking of which, he got the chance to wake up again, but the price he paid was that he lost the ability to communicate telepathically. Was Ao Daisai the same? Hell Creek Valley, on another red Gobi desert far away. The natural environment rendered this place barren and strange. It looked like the habitat of the Quetzalcoatlus rex, and in fact it was. A month ago, this place was the territory of a Quetzalcoatlus rex. But a month ago, a strange Tyrannosaurus rex came here. The reason why he was called strange was that all Tyrannosaurus rex would not like to live in this barren Gobi desert. But the other party liked to rest under the rock wall. It had to be away from the wind and could occasionally bask in the sun. It would drag its prey back to eat and then painstakingly clean up the remains. This was not Tyrannosaurus rex at all. Sometimes this Tyrannosaurus rex would go out for a few days and disappear, but he would always come back. It seemed that there was something here that could not be let go. Tyrannosaurus rex did not know. He only knew that he was nearby when he opened his eyes. Although this place was very barren, it was a place where birds did not shit. But when he left here, he felt that he had left something very important. No, the author has something to say. The price Ao Daisai paid was to forget the little bear. Chapter 197. If other dinosaurs invaded the Red Gobi Desert, the wind god pterosaur, who originally lived here, would definitely teach them a lesson. As the overlord of the sky in the Cretaceous period, a carnivore, the wind god pterosaur had a wingspan of 11 meters. He was not afraid of other dinosaurs at all. He even dared to rob a young Tyrannosaurus rex. The Tyrannosaurus rex that broke into his territory was a teenager. It was no longer an opponent he could compete with, so he could only stay away. Otherwise, he would not be able to sleep well at night. However, the wind god pterosaur did not give up his nest. He would patrol from time to time, hoping that the damned Tyrannosaurus rex would leave quickly. Yes, it was a teenager. The Tyrannosaurus rex had light skin on the surface. Even if his height and body size were the size of an adult Tyrannosaurus rex, he was still far from a real adult Tyrannosaurus rex. Perhaps he had just left his parents' small group and came out to experience alone. It was like this in Hell Creek Valley. Everything depended on oneself. Tyrannosaurus rex did not like to live in groups. They preferred to occupy a territory alone. If they encountered an unfamiliar Tyrannosaurus rex in their own territory, it meant that a fierce battle was inevitable, unless one of them was tactful and turned around before the conflict intensified. The unlucky wind god pterosaur probably guessed that this young Tyrannosaurus rex had nowhere to go, so he came to occupy his barren land. It was really hateful. Unfortunately, he guessed wrong. The Tyrannosaurus rex did have a place to go. He rested under the rock wall for a night and went out the next day at dawn. He did not seem to be very skilled in controlling his tail. When he walked forward with a serious face, the tail behind him never stayed in a fixed place. The flowers and stones on the roadside were its favorite objects. The wind god pterosaur secretly looked at him. Sure enough, it was a young Tyrannosaurus rex. Childish. I hope that he will not come back this time. The Cretaceous period should have been an era worthy of fear. Xiao Qixi, who had just arrived, thought that he would be too scared to sleep. In fact, After night fell, he was attacked by irresistible exhaustion and sleepiness. No matter how much fear he had, after an afternoon of adaptation, he found that he was not the protagonist of this era. In fact, no dinosaurs cared about him at all. It couldn't be helped. The armored dragon was just that unimpressive. Unfortunately, he and Aodicei were not that lucky. Based on their previous experiences, he believed that Aodicei must be an ankylosaurus. After eliminating the fear of the dinosaur era, Qishi developed a strong interest in her environment. This was the Cretaceous period, a mysterious ancient era. The evening sky was filled with burning clouds, setting off the towering mountains in the distance, giving it a feeling of being on a different planet. Now, there were no humans. Flowering and fruiting plants had just appeared, and the ancestors of mammals had just appeared. The land was dominated by ferns and palms, with only a small portion of the tall, broadleaf forest. Qishi used to be a top student. Based on the distribution and proportion of these plants, Qishi could tell that she was still far away from the fifth mass extinction. That's great. He had taken a calming pill. He slowly climbed to a suitable place to rest, behind a huge stone. This place was uneven, and scattered stones created many blind spots. If he hid in the dark, he could be alert for approaching animals at any time. He didn't know what the other ankylosaurus liked, but he was still used to living in the wild. There was no wind, there was shelter, and it was easy to defend but difficult to attack. Aodicei taught him. Although Qishi was short, his limbs could bend. After choosing a good position, he curled his limbs. Only the solid surface of his armor was exposed, and it was very safe. In fact, Qishi was not used to sleeping like this. He liked to sleep on his back. He was currently lying on his stomach because he had no choice. His abdomen was the most vulnerable part of his body. In such a dangerous environment, he naturally couldn't expose it. Besides, it was uncertain if he could even turn over. Qishi gave up sleeping on his back unless Aodicei was beside him. The night was very quiet. Occasionally, there would be terrible roars. Of course, the roars were very far away from him. Some dinosaurs would hunt at night. With their excellent night vision and night walking ability, they could easily succeed. Qishi used to be such a top predator. Now that the word hunting had completely left him, it didn't cause any psychological damage to him. It was good to be a peaceful ankylosaurus. He decided to walk around the woods tomorrow to see if there were any ripe wild fruits. But even if there were, he could only pick up the ones on the ground. At this time, he missed his wings very much. With these thoughts in mind, Qishi rested her head on her plump thighs and fell asleep. The night fog filled the warm air. The temperature dropped by 3 or 4 degrees, but it was still very suitable for plant growth. This was a good thing for vegetarian dinosaurs. Their population was huge, and they needed to eat a lot of plants every day. If the plants didn't grow in time, these vegetarian dinosaurs with big appetites would starve to death. It was always difficult to snatch fresh and tender food in places where Triceratops lived. Qishi planned to stay away from them and march to the distant broad-leaved forest early in the morning. After a night of evacuation, there was still water in the low-lying areas. The delicate ankylosaurus didn't want to get its feet wet and found a dry route for itself. The ecological environment in ancient times was very natural. The oxygen content was very high. Qishi raised his head and rushed forward. He felt very comfortable. Even if running made his body tired, his heart and lungs didn't feel uncomfortable. The code for the growth of giant beasts might be related to this. Superhumans wanted to explore more dinosaurs, so they followed the ankylosaurus into the forest. The forest was rich in food, but it was also very dangerous. After 2 hours of hard work, Qishi arrived at the forest. He couldn't wait to walk to a relatively short tree. He raised his head and ate a small handful of young leaves that had just grown. The morning sun hadn't shone on this place yet. The young leaves still had the fog from last night. They were sweet and refreshing. It was the leaf that Ankylosaurus liked to eat. Qishi happily pulled the wool from this tree and ate all the parts that he could eat. Since the broadleaf forest was full of tall trees, This kind of small tree was hard to find. He could only go deeper into the forest to explore. On the ground, covered with fallen leaves, he could occasionally see groups of mushrooms. They were white, red, and yellow. Although they looked cute and beautiful, Xiao Qishi didn't dare to eat them. Other than the young leaves on the trees, he could also eat the young shoots of the ferns that had just grown. In fact, many vegetarian dinosaurs weren't picky about the young and old ones. They had to eat so much food every day, so how could there be so many young shoots for them to eat? Superhumans wrote in their little notebook, some ankylosaurus were very picky about food. They only ate the young parts of plants. Xiao Qishi didn't come to the forest just to look for food. He wanted to find other ankylosaurus. He had lost the special connection with Ao Daisai. He didn't know how to find him. He came to the forest just to try his luck and fill his stomach. He wasn't the only one who was collecting plants here. There were other vegetarian dinosaurs around. As a new guest here, Xiao Qishi curiously observed them, even though he didn't know what they were called. Without the invasion of carnivorous dinosaurs, the vegetarian dinosaurs got along very well, and there were very few disputes over food. The biggest dispute between the vegetarian dinosaurs was fighting over mates. However, it was still not as fierce as the carnivorous dinosaurs. The atmosphere was very peaceful now. The sun shone through the gaps in the canopy. A few Edmontosaurus stayed near Xiao Qishi. The sound of plants breaking and chewing came one after another. This kind of scene was similar to what Xiao Qishi saw in movies. It had a kind of calming magic. Superhuman's attention temporarily shifted away from the Ankylosaurus. Obviously, the Edmontosaurus attracted them. In the next period of time, they would focus on observing the Edmontosaurus. He didn't know if it was Xiao Qishi's illusion, but he felt relaxed. This was too strange. He almost finished eating all the plants here. He dragged the big bony hammer deeper into the forest. Some birds flew in flocks in the sky. Without exception, they were all bigger and uglier than the birds in the future. Most of these birds were carnivores. If they had the chance, they would even dare to eat Tyrannosaurus rex. Because he was too deep into the forest, Xiao Qishi could only sleep in the forest tonight. This was a challenge for him, but he believed that the average dinosaur wouldn't dare to provoke him. At most, he would find a better place to rest, such as a pass where it was easy to hide. Unless their sense of smell was very good, it would be very difficult to find him. Night was the peak time for the Stygian raptors. They swept through the forest in groups, searching for prey. Even if these small carnivorous dinosaurs were not strong individually, they could not stop them from attacking in groups. Their lethality was not to be underestimated. Now that the noisy Nether River raptors were gone, Xiao Qishi could finally have a peaceful sleep. At this moment, a Stygian raptor passed by in front of him. It stopped there and looked at him. Its sharp gaze was frightening. This was the first time Xiao Qishi had seen a predator from the Cretaceous period up close. He found that their aura was not something that the beasts of the future could compare to. When humans faced the beasts of the future, such as tigers and lions, they would feel a sense of intimacy. But now, Xiao Qishi dared to say that if humans saw this Stygian raptor with its sharp teeth and fierce eyes, they would only feel their scalp tingle and run away. Stygian raptors were animals, but in fact, they were more like cold monsters with purple patterns on their bodies. However, Xiao Qishi was not afraid. He had more than 100 years of wilderness survival experience. What kind of storms had he not seen? A small Stygian raptor was nothing to him. He calmly opened his amber eyes and looked at the predator. The wind whistled. The Stygian raptors in front of him were already far away. Xiao Qishi blinked his eyes sinisterly. He suddenly stood up and made a lunging motion. The Stygian raptor was shocked. Its first reaction was to run away. In fact, the Ankylosaurus was not much taller when it stood up. However, it dared to provoke a carnivorous dinosaur. Xiao Qishi did not sleep well in the forest. He woke up very early. His mouth was dry, and he wanted to find a place to drink water. A small stream or a spring, anything would do. In the Cretaceous period, not all water sources were drinkable. Some water sources were too high in minerals and could not be drunk. Xiao Qishi could tell whether the water was drinkable or not with his keen sense of smell. Usually, In places where plants grew in the forest, the water sources were clean and drinkable. Xiao Qixi dragged his hammer and walked around the forest. Because the light was dim, and, as a vegetarian dinosaur, his night vision was not very good. Therefore, he did not notice that a Tyrannosaurus rex was quietly lying in ambush next to the spring where he was drinking water. Noticing that an ankylosaurus had barged in, the Tyrannosaurus rex that was observing the Edmontosaurus seemed to be very surprised and paused for a moment. Because of the unexpected appearance, he even stopped breathing halfway and changed to exhaling softly through his mouth. Strictly speaking, Ankylosaurus rex was also one of the Tyrannosaurus rex's food sources, although it was not the best choice. The young Tyrannosaurus rex squinted his big round eyes and looked up at the Edmontosaurus rex that was eating nearby. Then, he glanced at the uninvited guest in full armor lying next to the spring. In the young Tyrannosaurus rex's memory of growing up, he had never hunted an Ankylosaurus rex because the Ankylosaurus rex looked very difficult to eat. When the Ankylosaurus rex drank the water, his hammer tail was still wagging, full of satisfaction and joy. Of course, Xiao Qixi had been thirsty all night. He was very surprised when he saw the spring water. He lay down and drank nonstop. Of course, it did not mean that he had lost his vigilance. As long as something moved around him, he would know. For example, right now, the Edmontosaurus rex in the distance was leaving. After Xiao Qixi drank enough water, he also turned around and left. The Tyrannosaurus rex, who was hiding in the dark, realized that his prey, the Edmontosaurus rex, had already left. However, he still did not immediately chase after it. Instead, he looked at the rippling spring water. A fallen leaf gently fell on top of it and spun around. The Tyrannosaurus rex lowered his head and used his nose to push the leaf away. This small pool of spring water was quickly absorbed by him. The master of Hell Creek Valley straightened his back with cold eyes, looked back in the direction where the Ankylosaurus rex left, and then strode forward to chase after the Edmontosaurus rex. After an unknown amount of time, Xiao Qixi, who was diving into the ferns, seemed to hear the cry of a dinosaur. This unique cry was filled with the fear of being attacked by a predator, causing one's scalp to go numb. Even if one had long been accustomed to the law of the jungle, one could not remain indifferent. The Tyrannosaurus rex ate more than half of the Edmontosaurus rex's body. The remaining carcass attracted a group of hungry Stygian raptors. As long as the Tyrannosaurus rex was full, they were like magnanimous monarchs. They did not care if other dinosaurs picked up their leftover food. This young Tyrannosaurus rex was the same. He did not take another look at the remaining carcass and left. The forest was quiet again, as if nothing had happened. The other vegetarian dinosaurs were still leisurely eating their own food. The superhuman wrote in his little notebook in his mind, "Dinosaurs do not have the ability to empathize. They only focus on themselves." As expected of animals between cold-blooded and warm-blooded, it is very difficult for them to feel the warmth of mammals. The author has something to say. Later, they saw the passionate dragon equals 3 equals. Chapter 198. Just like what scientists studied, dinosaurs were between cold-blooded and warm-blooded. They were not completely cold-blooded animals, but they were also not warm-blooded animals. What kind of survival advantage did they have? It was well known that the advantage of warm-blooded animals was that their growth and development were sustainable and fast. They would not be affected by the climate and stop their body development like cold-blooded animals. They had more time in their lives to find food and reproduce. The advantage of cold-blooded animals was that they had a high conversion rate of the food they consumed. They only needed to consume a small amount of food to provide for their body, thus ensuring their survival. Dinosaurs were unique beasts that had the advantages of both. They had the advantage of survival. They were probably too perfect and outstanding, so fate arranged an earth-shattering extinction. The Quetzalcoatlus that had its nest stolen was probably happy today because the strange Tyrannosaurus rex did not appear. After a full meal, the behemoth that frightened the vegetarian dinosaurs in Hell Creek Valley walked through the forest with nothing to do. Every time it passed by, it would cause a commotion unless there were no other animals around. It seemed that it had long been used to this situation. When it was not hungry, it turned a blind eye to the surrounding creatures. But that was not entirely true. This Tyrannosaurus Rex walked for a while. It would stop and slowly look around, as if it was looking for something. The vegetarian dinosaurs that did not have time to escape met its gaze, and the fear in their pupils was obvious. Fortunately, the Tyrannosaurus Rex was not interested in them. After it saw that it was an ordinary dinosaur, it looked away without a trace of emotion. Hearing the footsteps of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the vegetarian dinosaurs that were scared out of their wits came back to their senses and immediately fled in panic. The superhuman wrote in his mind, the Tyrannosaurus Rex in a state of full disdain for the food around it. It turned out that carnivorous dinosaurs would only attack other vegetarian dinosaurs when they were hungry. Its attack was only related to hunger. The Tyrannosaurus Rex's violent and cruel temper only vented on its own kind. Even if two Tyrannosaurus Rex met by chance, they might not be able to pass by each other peacefully. Because Xiao Qixi was too picky about food, it spent half of the day looking for food. The remaining half was used to look for Ao Daisai. Moreover, he also had to deduct the time he needed to sleep. Therefore, he really had too little time to travel. By the time Xiao Qixi was finally full, it was already afternoon. In order to go further, he had to speed up. The muscles in his limbs tightened with his rhythmic pace, and the hammer on his tail dragged along the ground with a swish. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. As they walked, Xiao Qixi perked up his ears in confusion. Just now, he seemed to have heard a different rhythm. In order to confirm, he stopped. In fact, it was normal for there to be different movements in the forest. However, this was the era of the dinosaurs, where danger lurked everywhere. Of course, he had to be cautious. She blinked her big round eyes and looked around, but didn't find anything suspicious. Xiao Qixi suspected that he was thinking too much, so he continued to wriggle forward. Although his chassis was low, he firmly refused to admit that he was a reptile. He was definitely walking. The feeling of traveling aimlessly was not pleasant. In fact, it was quite empty and lonely. One had to know that it had been a long time since he had tried traveling alone. Sob sob. Longing made Xiao Qixi's eyes fill with tears. The more he crawled, the more he walked, the more uncomfortable he felt. Without a clear goal, without the slightest guidance, it seemed that he could only rely on the mysterious fate. That would be too unreliable. Even if he had a lifespan of 300 years, it wouldn't be enough, right? Just like that, Xiao Qixi walked forward while crying. Finally, he met the first ankylosaurus before sunset. At that time, he thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. He sadly wiped away his tears with his short forelimbs. Oh, it was a real ankylosaurus. The embarrassed Yolashanda quickly sniffed, returned to his cool and handsome appearance, and walked over to greet it. Halfway through, he raised his hammer with a whoosh. This way, he looked more energetic. Soon, he came to the side of the ankylosaurus. Its body was a size bigger than his, and its skin was a few degrees darker than his. At this time, he vaguely realized that he might be an underage body. Xiao Qixi stopped there, stretched his neck, and made a single sound. He felt that he was quite cute. It would make the other party feel provoked. The big ankylosaurus stopped eating the plants and turned around to look at the unfamiliar little ankylosaurus with a trace of confusion in its eyes. Damn it. After losing spiritual communication, both parties didn't know what to do after looking at each other. However, this didn't pose a problem for Xiao Qixi. He thought for a moment, then stretched his neck and turned around. Then he nodded his head and bent his knees. He imitated a hip-hop youth who listened to music on the streets. If it was an Ao Daisai, it would definitely remember. However, the big ankylosaurus in front of him didn't show any reaction to his exquisite imitation. It didn't even have the slightest desire to investigate. Therefore, this Ao Daisai, who was 99% not an Ao Daisai, Xiao Qixi was slightly disappointed. He stood on his hind legs and imitated Teddy's walking. How is it? Does it look familiar? After chewing the remaining ferns in its mouth, the big ankylosaurus turned around and ignored this strange little ankylosaurus. In other words, the other party wasn't an Aodicei. Since he was already mentally prepared, Xiao Qishi wasn't very upset. However, he put down his hammer with a bang. Since it wasn't an Aodicei, then why did he raise his hammer? Woo-woo-woo. Yolashanda was like an abandoned puppy. She dragged her hammer and walked forward cutely. Walking forward with one's head held high and a smile was a form of persistence. Walking forward with one's head lowered while crying was also a form of persistence. Xiao Qishi chose the latter. He was already so sad, but he still didn't drop a few golden beans. Was this reasonable? After crying and rushing, the little ankylosaurus was hungry again. He suspected that he ate so much because he was still growing. It definitely wasn't because he was picky about food. Fortunately, the plants here were very rich. It seemed that they weren't eaten by the locusts, Triceratops plus Edmontosaurus. Xiao Qishi ate the leaves while mourning. He found that his forelimbs were quite flexible. He could stand up and reach high branches. However, this poor small tree was a little shaky under the weight of his 2-ton body. Discovering a new skill was something to be happy about. Xiao Qishi's mood improved a little. Just as he squinted his eyes and ate the leaves contentedly, he caught another strange movement. Xiao Qishi stopped to look around. After waiting for a while and seeing that there was no follow-up, he continued to eat. However, he did it on purpose. He listened carefully to his surroundings while chewing the leaves. With his sharp senses, he was more and more certain that a breath had been following him since the afternoon, or even earlier. But how was this possible? This was an ancient era where humans didn't exist. How could something as ridiculous as being followed happen? If it was hunting, then it was even more impossible. If it had the time to follow him, it would be better to catch a Triceratops. Triceratops. There was no enmity between them. Sensing the approximate location of the other party, Xiao Qishi put down his forelimbs from the poor tree and shook his head on the ground. Then, with a little fear and a little curiosity, he blinked and slowly walked to the place where the other party was hiding, deep in the dark forest. It was dusk now. The forest was a little dark. Xiao Qishi felt that he was very brave. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to face the perverted animal that had been following him for half a day. Wait, perverted? His fat legs stopped in midair. He hesitated. Should I give up? It's not worth it to face the perverted animal head-on. Just as Xiao Qishi was hesitating, he felt that the other party was moving backward. So cowardly? Then what's there to be afraid of? Let's go. Yolashanda was no longer afraid. He quickly walked to the front in case the perverted animal that had been following him ran away. After he rushed out, he blinked and the first thing he saw was a tree. Speaking of which, the trunk of this tree was very big. However, no matter how big the trunk of this tree was, it couldn't stop a huge creature. So what was the guy hiding behind the tree thinking? Seeing a Tyrannosaurus Rex at such an opportune time, no matter how he thought about it, he should quickly turn around and run away, instead of standing there and wondering what the other party was doing. At this moment, Xiao Qishi saw a Tyrannosaurus Rex behind the tree trunk that thought he had perfectly hidden. Other than the middle part of the other party's body that was blocked by the trunk, his hands, feet, and both sides of his head were exposed to his sight. This Xiao Qishi was so shocked that he held his breath and forgot to react. The other party didn't move and looked very confident. In that case, what else could Xiao Qishi say? He wasn't an idiot. Of course, he couldn't run over and remind the other party. I see you. The virtual claws scratched his head. Xiao Qishi chose to quietly reverse until he was a safe distance away from the other party. He was so scared that he screamed and ran away. Oh my God, a Tyrannosaurus Rex that knows how to stalk cute little armored dinosaurs is so scary. After hearing the other party's footsteps stomp away, the huge creature hiding behind the tree trunk slowly moved its eyes away. A pair of beast-like vertical pupils were embedded in the fierce and barbaric face. It was indeed a Tyrannosaurus Rex. As for whether or not it knew that it had not hidden well, it was obviously an unanswered mystery. Unless dinosaurs could speak one day. Xiao Qishi ran 2 kilometers away in one breath. He knew that this distance was nothing to a Tyrannosaurus rex, but sorry, he tried his best. Moreover, the other party didn't chase after him. It was really strange. Could it be that his defense was so good that the other party didn't find a flaw to bite? Xiao Qishi leaned against a big rock, rubbing his itchy tail while thinking about all his actions today. Well, it seemed that there were flaws everywhere. It was a miracle that he was still alive. In order to be vigilant against the abnormal Tyrannosaurus rex that knew how to stalk, Xiao Qishi slept very late tonight and didn't dare to relax at all. He had to figure out whether this was a coincidence or premeditated, although it was a bit unlikely that such careful thinking would be used on dinosaurs. Who could say for sure? Without a boyfriend by her side to protect her, it was better to be careful. Thinking that there was still no news from Ao Daisai, Xiao Qishi felt wronged and pouted. Ao Daisai, come back quickly and help me beat up the big pervert. The author has something to say. Xiao Xiaojia. It must be because I'm too cute. It suddenly appeared at the second night watch. Thump, thump, thump. Chapter 199. It had been a tiring day, rushing and frightened. The consequence of the little armored dragon sleeping late was that it slept like a log the next morning. When its whole body relaxed, its limbs were no longer curled up under its body. Instead, they were completely spread out, and even its cheeks were pressed against the ground. Needless to say, its tail was in close contact with the ground. From afar, Xiao Qishi looked like a pile of armored dragon biscuits, the kind that was snoring. Later, it seemed to be dreaming. Its hind legs unconsciously moved on the ground, and small stones were rustling. This sound also startled the Tyrannosaurus that was curled up and sleeping nearby. It quickly opened its eyes and woke up. Then, it shook off the fog that had fallen on its left face last night. Its right face was dry because it slept on its side and did not turn over until dawn. Its sleeping position was just like when it was in its mother's belly. Its hind legs and front claws were very close to each other, and even its tail was curled up to surround itself. This was the sleeping position that the Tyrannosaurus rex was used to. The first thing it did when it got up was to subconsciously turn its head to look in a certain direction. It was surprised to see that the armored dragon was still there and sleeping soundly. It did not know what the Tyrannosaurus rex was thinking. It lifted its hind legs and quietly left the place. It was too easy to sleep in the morning. Xiao Qishi slept until the sun was high in the sky. This was a very dangerous thing. After it woke up, it still had lingering fears. Next time, it must not let its guard down just because it was lucky. With this thought in mind, it stretched lazily from head to tail, and its two ends formed a W shape. It was very comfortable. Oh! The little armored dragon stretched its two legs back in turn. Just as it was about to stop and set off, it suddenly saw a bloody animal carcass near it. The next second, the little armored dragon's horrified cries suddenly rang out in the forest. It had seen many animal carcasses, but this was the age of dinosaurs, and it was a vegetarian dinosaur, okay? If it woke up and found an animal carcass at its bedside, it would definitely have a violent reaction. Which immoral bastard did this? After pondering for a moment, the word pervert appeared in its mind. Xiao Qishi immediately thought of the strange Tyrannosaurus rex that it met yesterday evening. Placing a corpse next to the Ankylosaurus's pillow, what a perverted hobby. Xiao Qishi didn't want to probe any further. He immediately raised his hammer and ran away. His angry and frightened voice played on a loop the entire way. After he left, the giant creature slowly walked out from the depths of the forest and stood in front of the food. It looked into the distance as if it didn't understand why the Ankylosaurus didn't like the Edmonton Dragon's thigh meat. Perhaps to the Tyrannosaurus rex, the most delicious meat on a prey's body was the thigh. They were not particularly fond of internal organs, and if they had a choice, they wouldn't even bother with rotten meat. The young Tyrannosaurus rex paused momentarily before lowering its head to chomp down on the food. Its two rows of sharp teeth crushed the leg bone in just a few bites before swallowing it whole. Clearly, his mind was not on the food. After finishing its meal, The young Tyrannosaurus Rex lowered its head and sniffed the ground strangely. Last night, the little armored dragon had been lying on the ground all night. The Ankylosaurus's limbs had rubbed against the ground, so it had left its own scent. Perhaps it wasn't very strong, but it definitely couldn't escape the Tyrannosaurus Rex's sharp nose. Generally speaking, the Tyrannosaurus Rex would deliberately sniff the scent left behind by other dinosaurs. It was either for hunting or for courtship. This young Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't lack food. He could easily catch the Edmonton dragon that wasn't very strong. This was something that the superhumans could testify to. The Edmonton dragon that they had observed had already become the Tyrannosaurus Rex's breakfast this morning. Therefore, they changed their focus to observing the Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, they noticed that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was acting strangely. When the Tyrannosaurus Rex walked towards the sleeping Ankylosaurus with its food in its mouth, the superhumans broke out in cold sweat for the Ankylosaurus Rex. They hoped that it would wake up soon and stop sleeping in. If it continued to sleep, there would be no dragons left. The little Ankylosaurus Rex, who couldn't feel their anxiety, was still blowing small bubbles from its nostrils. Fortunately, the Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't hurt it. It just put the food next to it. The superhumans were dumbfounded. They could only be described as stunned. They immediately analyzed the meaning of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's behavior. Originally, scientists thought that the world of dinosaurs only had hunting behavior and courtship behavior. They didn't have social behavior. Sure enough, many things had to be seen with one's own eyes before one could draw conclusions. In the cruel and dangerous Cretaceous period, carnivorous dinosaurs and vegetarian dinosaurs could also socialize. This young Tyrannosaurus Rex obviously wanted to become friends with the little Ankylosaurus Rex. Otherwise, it wouldn't have shared its food. Dinosaurs were extremely selfish and cold-blooded species. They could watch their own kind die beside them. They would even eat the meat of their own kind. The superhumans noted in their small notebooks that some Tyrannosaurus Rex had a desire to socialize, including but not limited to vegetarian dinosaurs. The vegetarian dinosaurs' reactions were quite panicked. This meant that this friendship couldn't be established unless the Tyrannosaurus Rex became vegetarian. It was raining in Hell Creek Valley. The raindrops sprinkled in the forest. The pearl-like water lines followed the leaves and dripped on the back of the Ankylosaurus Rex. That didn't matter. Anyway, its head was already hidden under a plant with large leaves. Its body and tail were drenched to their heart's content. This was the reign of the Cretaceous period. Chow Chi-Chi stuck out the tip of its tongue and licked the water droplets dripping from the tip of the leaf. Sure enough, there was no pollution. However, the rain had been going on for too long. It waved its tail in boredom. Occasionally, some vegetarian dinosaurs would walk by in the rain. They didn't seem to be afraid of the rain. That's right, dinosaurs weren't that particular. Chow Chi-Chi wasn't like that. He could be drenched everywhere, but his brain couldn't. This was his last stubbornness. He didn't have hair in his life, so there was no problem with washing his hair. However, he had to admit that after the armor on his body was washed by the rain, it had a brand new feeling. Other dinosaurs didn't hide from the rain. The Tyrannosaurus Rex ignored the rain and walked in the rain as usual. Its movements were neither fast nor slow. If it walked through the forest like this, it would definitely cause a lot of vegetarian dinosaurs to panic. Today, it was raining heavily. All the animals could only hear the sound of the rain. Even the smell was blocked. But did this mean it was safe? Not necessarily. The rain made the whole world wet. Chow Chi-Chi's mood was as uncertain as the current atmosphere. The main thing was that he kept feeling that there was a wet gaze looking at him. It wasn't malicious, and it didn't have any other feelings. If he had to say, maybe there was a trace of doubt. What was there to doubt about? Haven't you seen such a cute Ankylosaurus? You've never seen anything like this before. It had been more than half a day since she woke up and saw a corpse placed beside her bed. Chow Chi-Chi finally adjusted her mentality. She felt that it was impossible for there to be such a pervert in this era, so the other party's intention was definitely not to scare her. Using the simplest way of thinking, it was easy to figure out that the other party's behavior was giving food. This was ridiculous. Before some dinosaurs express their goodwill, can you please consider that the little cutie you're trying to be friendly with is a vegetarian? No wonder you couldn't make friends. It was like this. Xiao Qixi also thought that the other party wanted to be friends with him. Otherwise, one was a carnivore and the other was a vegetarian. Could it be that they were courting each other? No matter how low the dinosaur's IQ was, it should know that cross-species children couldn't be born. But, thinking about the other party's tricks behind the tree trunk, he should reserve his opinion on the IQ conclusion. Xiao Qixi didn't mean to look down on the other party's IQ. If the other party wasn't a carnivorous Tyrannosaurus Rex, he would be happy to be friends. The problem was that he was on the other party's menu. When he was happy, they were friends. When he was unhappy, he was lunch. Sorry, Xiao Qixi looked into the distance a little apologetically. I can't afford to be friends with you. It's more suitable for us to be strangers. But then again, why would a proper Tyrannosaurus Rex want to be friends with an Ankylosaurus? Was it because it couldn't find its own kind as a friend? Thinking about it, Tyrannosaurus Rex did seem to be loners, except for couples. It was even more impossible for two male Tyrannosaurus Rex to be partners. They could only be in a competitive relationship. Maybe the Tyrannosaurus Rex also felt lonely, Xiao Qixi thought. After the rain stopped, he continued to move forward in the forest. Every time he encountered an unfamiliar Ankylosaurus, he would go up and greet it hopefully to test if the other party was the boyfriend he was looking for. Except for the first disappointment, Xiao Qixi had adjusted his mentality. Even if he found out that the other party wasn't his boyfriend, he would maintain a calm mood and continue to move forward. Ao Daisai, come out quickly. Your little baby was very popular in the Cretaceous period. You might not believe it, but a carnivorous Tyrannosaurus Rex took a fancy to me. He has been following me and wants to be friends with me. But how is that possible? Not to mention that I won't be friends with a carnivorous Tyrannosaurus Rex. Even if I think he's good and am willing to take the risk to build this friendship, I still have you. Just because the Tyrannosaurus Rex likes me doesn't mean that it likes other Ankylosauruses, so I won't accept him. The Ankylosauruses I met along the way also like me very much. They were willing to have short exchanges with me. What a group of gentle big guys. As for the persistent Tyrannosaurus Rex, I really don't know what to do with him. I hope he will give up on the cute me in 2 days and find other Ankylosauruses to be friends. But I think the other Ankylosauruses will also be scared out of their wits by him. It's really pitiful when you think about it. I'm talking about him and the Ankylosaurus he likes. Xiao Qixi thought so. He felt that the Tyrannosaurus Rex would give up in 2 days. Of course, the other party was still following him from a distance. Today was another fulfilling day. Xiao Qixi met a total of 3 Ankylosauruses on the road. Although they were not Ao Daisai, it didn't matter. Due to the water in the low-lying area, Xiao Qixi climbed up a high hill to sleep tonight. It seemed to be very close to the sky, as if he could reach out and pick the stars. Maybe Ao Daisai is also looking at the same star. Xiao Qixi thought so and fell asleep contentedly with his forelimbs. Good night, Ao Daisai. Good night, the starry sky of the Cretaceous period. Good night, the idiot Tyrannosaurus Rex that was still wandering around nearby. Being able to sleep peacefully under the watchful eyes of the Tyrannosaurus Rex meant that he was sure that the other party would not hurt him. Anyway, even if he was not sure, he couldn't keep his eyes open all the time. When he woke up the next day, Xiao Qixi was still in a daze. He naturally propped himself up with his forelimbs. He blinked his eyes and realized that he was in an incredible position, sitting. He could indeed sit if he put his tail to the side, and it was quite comfortable. Xiao Qixi was happy for a moment. Suddenly, his eyes froze. On the rock in front of him, there was a pile of red wild fruits. Wow! Xiao Qixi had seen these familiar wild fruits growing on the tall and sturdy trees during her journey. However, due to her lack of height, she had not been able to eat them. Now, when he saw the fruits, his mouth immediately secreted saliva, mainly because the wild fruits looked delicious. Xiao Qixi stood up and carefully walked to the pile of fruits. Sure enough, he smelled a strong, fruity fragrance. His height was just right. He stood naturally, and the wild fruit at the top was just under the tip of his nose. As long as he opened his mouth, he could eat it, but he could not eat it. It was obvious that this pile of wild fruits was the work of the idiot Tyrannosaurus Rex. The other party wanted to make friends with him, so this was a meeting gift. They would meet after eating it. Xiao Qixi took a few steps back, suppressed his hunger, and turned to leave. He felt that the Tyrannosaurus Rex would be very sad. He did not accept the other party's gift the first time because the gift was really too shocking. The second gift was the right one. When he woke up, he was pleasantly surprised, but he was really sorry. Because of many reasons, he could only coldly refuse. Xiao Qixi braced himself and walked 2 kilometers. He did not know if the Tyrannosaurus Rex would be sad, but he knew that he was very sad now. A Tyrannosaurus Rex giving wild fruits to an ankylosaurus. This was simply a pure love story that happened in the Cretaceous period, and the protagonist, because of some irresistible reasons, really had no way to accept it. Damn, it was too melodramatic. Imagine the complicated relationship, natural enemies, and so on. It was even more melodramatic than the 8 o'clock show. Today's wild fruits were also not accepted. A huge shadow came in front of the pile of wild fruits. After all, this was not food that he could eat, so he did not eat the food that the ankylosaurus rejected him like yesterday morning. If the Tyrannosaurus Rex was a human, it would definitely have negative emotions such as depression and loss. Fortunately, he was just a Tyrannosaurus Rex with no superfluous emotions. Soon, he also skipped over the pile of wild fruits and shuttled through Hell Creek Valley as usual. The gaze that had been following him seemed to have disappeared. Xiao Qixi thought in a daze. Maybe his cold rejection had worked, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex finally left. That's great. Go find another ankylosaurus. If you continue to be so gentle and unchanging, there will definitely be an ankylosaurus Rex who will accept you. Feeling that the Tyrannosaurus Rex incident had come to an end, Xiao Qixi felt that it was a pity for the pile of wild fruits and slowly went back. Anyway, the Tyrannosaurus Rex had already left. It was shameful to waste food. After returning, he saw that the pile of bright red wild fruits was indeed still piled up on a rock from afar. Xiao Qixi was very moved. "Wah, fruit, I'm coming." He rushed to the pile of fruits in a few steps, wrapped his forelimbs around the pile of fruits, and lowered his head to eat. In the depths of the forest, the Tyrannosaurus Rex used his mouth to drag a green branch. The lush leaves still had the morning dew left on them. Whoosh, whoosh. Very soon, he stopped in his tracks. His golden pupils slowly turned from a narrow slit to a round one. On a small empty slope, the ankylosaurus that had left and returned was eating fruit. One of the fruits fell from the rock because the other party was too excited to eat it, and then rolled down the small slope. The young Tyrannosaurus Rex continued to walk. Whoosh, whoosh. The sound of branches dragging on the ground was getting closer and closer. Xiao Qixi finally stopped wolfing down the fruit. His eyes widened in horror, and he didn't want to accept the fact that the Ankylosaurus Rex was still nearby. God, he stuck out his tongue and licked the pulp from the corner of his mouth. What kind of large-scale social suicide scene is this? So embarrassing. Xiao Qixi wished that a huge meteorite crater would appear right now so that he could hide in it. But it was obvious that the meteorite would not come to Earth for millions of years, and now he could only face it bravely. Wiping his mouth, Xiao Qixi sat on the ground and turned his head. He saw the Tyrannosaurus Rex pick up the fruit from the small slope. The small fruit was pitifully small compared to the Ankylosaurus Rex's huge fangs. Such a comical and contrasting scene dispelled Xiao Qixi's nervousness, until the Ankylosaurus Rex lowered its head and put the fruit in front of him. At that moment, the distance between them was less than half a meter. Xiao Qixi even smelled the smell of grass coming from the Ankylosaurus Rex. Wait, is this the smell of a Tyrannosaurus Rex? Author has something to say. Little Bear. You can't be greedy tea, carrot tea. I don't know if you like to read about transmigrating between the past and the present. Today, I recommend a novel about transmigrating between the past and the present. The Men in Embroidered Clothes debut author Chiemo, the commander of the embroidered clothes guards, Pei Yin, suddenly transmigrated with his team during the process of handling a case. Pei Yin could write poems and paint, jump on roofs and vault over walls, and was good at everything. But once he transmigrated, he did not know how to take the elevator, use a mobile phone, surf the internet, and was so poor that he could not even eat. At this time, someone came to him. "Handsome, are you debuting in a talent show?" Talent show? The kind that entered the palace to be a concubine? How could the commander of the embroidered clothes guards do such a sensational thing? Later, it was really good. So when others sang and danced, they brandished knives and swords. When others created the image of a foodie, they specialized in solving difficult cases. When others faked their academic qualifications, they contributed historical materials to the country. Pei Yin ordered the embroidered clothes guards to track them down that night. The next day, they interrogated the internet haters and shocked the audience. After the program was broadcasted, fans realized that the members of the Ankylosaurus rex were all tall and had long legs, slender waists, and perky butts. 8-pack abs. Fans changed sides. They climbed onto new walls. The president of Shiyu Corporation, He Shiyu, was a human-shaped work machine. He claimed that he had no other interests other than work. Until one day, he pressed a man in a flying suit into the bathtub. The men in embroidered clothes guards transmigrating between the past and the present. Their idol was attacked by X's rich tyrant. Chapter 200. Of course, ordinary tyrannosauruses don't smell like grass. They're different from warm-blooded animals and cold-blooded animals. They don't smell like grass. The reason why this Tyrannosaurus smells like a plant is because it just bit into a tree branch. The fresh sap of the tree branch is still emitting from its body. The Ankylosaurus is a fan of leaves, so it has a very keen sense of smell when it comes to its food. While it was puzzled, it suddenly saw a tree. This Tyrannosaurus actually dragged the whole tree over. The fresh green leaves that were still dripping with water swayed slightly in the wind, as if it was calling out to the hungry little Ankylosaurus. Xiao Qixi swallowed his saliva. His eyes moved from the leaves to the Tyrannosaurus. Damn it, what he should pay attention to now is not the leaves or the fruit, but this crazy Tyrannosaurus with strange behavior. What is it trying to do? Dragging such a big tree over, is it trying to feed me? After the Tyrannosaurus put down the fruit, it looked at him with only one eye. This is because the eyes of the Tyrannosaurus are on both sides of its face. If they want to let both eyes see the same thing, they have to position their heads very straight, because the overlapping range of their two eyes is only a little. However, this is not a disadvantage. It should be known that the combined range of the Tyrannosaurus's two eyes is a full 300 degrees. When walking on the road, everything around you can't hide except for your own back. Seeing the little Ankylosaurus staring at it blankly, the Tyrannosaurus that has been following it for several days shook the tip of its tail slightly. This action directly weakened the barbaric aura on its body. However, its face didn't change much. It still has the tyrant look that all vegetarian dinosaurs are afraid of. Shaking the tip of its tail? Xiao Qixi didn't understand the habits and behavior of dinosaurs. He didn't dare to understand the Tyrannosaurus's actions like he would understand a dog. However, since it stood in front of him for so long without attacking, it must be a friendly Tyrannosaurus. In that case, he also put away his embarrassment. Thinking about it, there was really no need. The Tyrannosaurus was just a dinosaur. It wouldn't care whether other dinosaurs made a fool of themselves or not. It was just that he couldn't get over the hurdle in his heart. He didn't want to accept the Tyrannosaurus friendship, but he also didn't want to give up this pile of wild fruits. It was really too shameful. Sorry. What's more, the other party had even dragged a leaf over. What kind of love was this? Wait a minute. Xiao Qixi eyes suddenly widened, and she raised her head a little more in disbelief, trying to see the Tyrannosaurus Rex's face clearly. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was simply too tall. He was already short when he was sitting on the ground. If he really made friends with this Tyrannosaurus Rex, he would definitely get cervical spondylosis. Moreover, Xiao Qixi now suspected that this Tyrannosaurus rex, which was different from her own species, might be Ao Daisai. Of course, it was just a suspicion. After all, he and Ao Daisai had always been the same species. How did they become natural enemies? Taking a step back, he didn't find any traces of Ao Daisai on this Tyrannosaurus rex. Ao Daisai wouldn't be so polite to him. It probably wanted to hug him and eat him as soon as it saw him, unless there was an accident when he was reincarnated. Ah, could it be that he didn't remember? Xiao Qixi eyes widened and soon filled with tears. Why did this happen? Didn't it take away their communication skills? Why did it take away Ao Daisai's memory? Although she was still not sure that this was the truth, at the thought of such a possibility, big drops of tears fell from the Ankylosaurus Rex's eyes. He didn't eat the fruit anymore and just sat there sobbing. Did he forget so many precious memories? Boo-hoo! It wasn't easy for Ao Daisai to learn so much knowledge. The Ankylosaurus Rex's brain was already a knowledge base. It would be a pity to forget it. Xiao Qixi's mentality collapsed. Although she knew that it was possible to remember things halfway like a lion, shouldn't it get better and better? Ever since the killer whale, Ao Daisai would never forget it every time it was reincarnated. Now, it was suddenly like this. What did it mean? Thinking of the bad things, the little Ankylosaurus cried even more sadly. Cretaceous period didn't have tears. He stood aside and looked at Xiao Qixi's Tyrannosaurus Rex. Obviously, he didn't know what crying meant. He just smelled a faint, salty smell. However, not understanding the meaning of tears doesn't mean that Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't feel Ankylosaurus Rex's sadness. In order to see Ankylosaurus Rex's little face clearly, Tyrannosaurus Rex bent down and put his huge head in front of the other party. Xiao Qixi, who was sobbing, was so frightened by the sudden appearance of this big face that he forgot to cry. This hasty pause quickly turned into a hiccup from his mouth. Tyrannosaurus Rex blinked, then slowly withdrew his head, picked up a fruit from the side, and gave it to Ankylosaurus. His slow and gentle movements seemed to say, "Don't cry, eat the fruit." Xiao Qixi stupidly stretched out his forelimbs to catch the fruit, and then cried even more sadly. So gentle, it must be Ao Daisai. That's what he thought deep in his heart, but he was still afraid of the other party. Maybe this is the uncontrollable fear of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Although Xiao Qixi knew that this was already very good, at least they didn't get separated from each other on a vast continent. Xiao Qixi, who pulled himself back to reality, sniffled. In fact, God didn't owe them anything. Every life after the polar bear was picked up. Although it was sad to lose his memory, Ao Daisai was still so nice, except for a little scary. Hoo-hoo! Tyrannosaurus Rex was too deterrent to vegetarian dinosaurs. If he wasn't brave, he wouldn't have dared to come back to eat the fruit. Tyrannosaurus Rex shook his head and snorted. It was a very low-frequency sound, as if urging the little Ankylosaurus to eat. After crying, Xiao Qixi's whole body was attacked by hunger and fatigue. He temporarily put everything aside and lowered his head to take a bite of the fruit. The wild fruit was huge for humans, and he bit off half of it. In fact, Ankylosaurus Rex's mouth was not big. Compared to a certain Tyrannosaurus Rex's mouth was small and exquisite. After all, Tyrannosaurus Rex could eat countless wild fruits of this size in one go. Of course, Xiao Qixi could eat one in one bite, but wouldn't it be like Zhu Beiji eating ginseng fruit? He didn't taste anything. What a waste. Since he began to eat, the Tyrannosaurus Rex next to him quieted down. The other side of the eye facing him looked at him, and the outside eye looked around. Even if they were the overlords of Hell Creek Valley, they were used to controlling the environment. After all, there was more than one Tyrannosaurus Rex in Hell Creek Valley. Maybe this place was the territory of another Tyrannosaurus Rex. If the other side appeared, they would have to leave here. On the vast continent, there was enough territory for them to divide. In fact, it was not so easy to encounter a Tyrannosaurus Rex by chance. His mood calmed down a little. Xiao Qixi held the fruit and ate while quietly looking up to observe the other side. This was a Tyrannosaurus rex with a very light body color. Its body was very clean, covered with a layer of white fluff from head to tail. It looked very soft to the touch. There was no smell on its body. Its golden green eyes looked very deep. Like all Tyrannosaurus rex, it also had two very cute short hands, but it didn't make people feel that it was very funny. What a joke! When a Tyrannosaurus rex stood in front of you, the first thing you noticed was definitely not the pair of short hands, but the other side's two rows of sharp teeth and thick and powerful hind legs. Its tail was very thick. Xiao Qixi quickly looked away and ate the last fruit. Just as he was licking the juice on his forelegs, a broken tree was moved in front of him by the Tyrannosaurus rex's tail. This was enough to prove how powerful the Tyrannosaurus rex's tail was. Moving a tree was a piece of cake for it. Xiao Qixi was a little embarrassed. This tree was really prepared for him. He quickly glanced at the Tyrannosaurus rex, who was 80% his boyfriend, and silently accepted the tree. Since he couldn't communicate now, and the other side was a carnivorous Tyrannosaurus rex, he really didn't know how to communicate with it. In any case, he was still hungry. Xiao Qixi didn't care about anything else. He hugged the top of the tree and gnawed on it. The tender green leaves were so delicious. If it wasn't for the gift from the Tyrannosaurus rex, he wouldn't be able to eat the leaves on the top of the tree in another 100 years. So thank you, Tyrannosaurus rex. When he had the opportunity to use the Triceratops and Edmontosaurus rex, he would also quickly eat the leaves of a tree like a locust. Burp! The round-bellied Tyrannosaurus rex burped and went from a sitting position to a lying position. Because it was uncomfortable to sit after eating, he could see that his belly was squashed. Although they couldn't communicate, the Tyrannosaurus rex clearly knew that burping meant that it was full. Being full was the most important thing in an animal's life. Even the Tyrannosaurus rex, who didn't lack food, would feel happy because of being full. He stood at the side and looked at the little Tyrannosaurus rex reservedly. Other than feeding it, he didn't do anything else. This made the atmosphere between them a little strange and polite. This was normal. After all, they didn't know each other and were natural enemies. It was good enough that the atmosphere wasn't tense. Enduring the strange atmosphere, Xiao Qixi, who was warmly received, wanted to thank the other party, so he tried hard to raise his head and put on a smile. Because the Tyrannosaurus rex would show his teeth when he smiled, the Tyrannosaurus rex saw this scene and actually took 2 steps back. Xiao Qixi, F***CK. He was just showing friendliness, not showing his teeth. Besides, the other party was a tall and strong Tyrannosaurus rex. What was he afraid of? The situation was a little awkward. Fortunately, the other party didn't seem to take it to heart and quickly moved back those 2 steps. This time, the Tyrannosaurus rex didn't try to show his friendliness with a smile. He wanted to rub his head against the other party's leg, so he slowly crawled forward. Because he was going downhill, he lowered his limbs, and after eating, his chassis was even lower, so he was indeed crawling. The young Tyrannosaurus rex quietly watched the Tyrannosaurus rex walk towards him. When the other party stretched out his neck to attack his leg, he easily retracted his leg and stood in a different direction. This Xiao Qixi made a friendly gurgling sound to show that he didn't mean any harm. F***CK. Was this a signal he had the right to send to the Tyrannosaurus rex? Ridiculous. But he had to thank him. Xiao Qixi walked towards the other leg of the Tyrannosaurus rex, but the result was the same. The Tyrannosaurus rex raised his leg again and stood in a different place. Forget it. There was no need to force a natural enemy. Since the other party didn't trust him, Xiao Qixi gave up on contacting him, although he didn't know what to be afraid of about a mere Tyrannosaurus rex. Just as he crawled away a little angrily, a Tyrannosaurus rex's legs stretched out and stood in front of him. The slow Tyrannosaurus rex finally reacted. Was this invincible and cute little Tyrannosaurus rex trying to be friendly? Xiao Qixi's mood suddenly brightened, and then he happily used his head to bump against the Tyrannosaurus rex's leg, but before he could touch it, the Tyrannosaurus rex ran away again. He didn't have time to stop in time, and the entire Tyrannosaurus Rex fell to the ground. After eating a mouthful of mud, Xiao Qixi angrily got up and wanted to explode. Trash Tyrannosaurus Rex. You think you're very humorous. If it wasn't for the fact that he suspected that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was his boyfriend, the bullied Tyrannosaurus Rex would definitely have wagged his tail and said goodbye to him, never to see him again. So angry. Since he was willing to feed him, why did he have to be so cold? Xiao Qixi abandoned his human thoughts and thought about it carefully. Animals were very defensive, not to mention a solitary creature like the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Perhaps even the Tyrannosaurus Rex himself didn't know why he had such strange feelings for a Tyrannosaurus. He could provide him with food, but he wouldn't necessarily let him touch him. That was probably it. In the end, they weren't familiar with each other, and they were still very unfamiliar with each other. Indeed, for dinosaurs, physical contact was a very high-pressure and borderline behavior. The Tyrannosaurus Rex watched as the Tyrannosaurus Rex fell, and his pupils contracted slightly. Perhaps he already understood that the Tyrannosaurus Rex just wanted to play with him and not attack him. The Tyrannosaurus Rex blinked, and the short little hands in front of his chest moved, but in the end, he stood still and didn't go over. When the little Tyrannosaurus Rex got up on its own, it used its cute little hands to clean the mud on its face. The Tyrannosaurus Rex made a low sound and turned his body to the side as if he was about to leave, but his eyes were always looking at the Tyrannosaurus Rex. What? The Tyrannosaurus Rex turned around and looked at him in confusion. What was his brother trying to say? The Tyrannosaurus Rex took 2 steps forward and looked back at the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The backlight cast a layer of soft light on his face. Are you asking me to go with you? Although the Tyrannosaurus Rex could no longer hear his thoughts, Xiao Qixi still habitually shouted at him. That's right? Otherwise, why would he dawdle? It had been a long time since this morning. Unless this Tyrannosaurus Rex had nothing to do and didn't care how much time he wasted feeding the Tyrannosaurus Rex. TSK, but what serious business could a Tyrannosaurus Rex have? Xiao Qixi concluded that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was inviting him to leave together with him based on his level 10 understanding of the animal language. Deep in his heart, Xiao Qixi naturally wanted to follow because it was very likely that it would be Ao Daisai, but he didn't feel safe. He didn't know where this Tyrannosaurus Rex was taking him and whether or not its attitude would change after a period of time. It was too dangerous. If he had to follow, he was willing to imitate the Tyrannosaurus Rex's previous actions and follow from a distance to observe for a while. Perhaps this was the nature of natural enemies. You guard against me, I guard against you too. Just thinking about it made him feel a little depressed. The Tyrannosaurus Rex wanted to leave together, but it was silently rejected by the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It seemed that the Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't know what to do either. It could only pace back and forth, swinging its tail a little absent-mindedly, and then sneak a glance at the extremely defensive Tyrannosaurus Rex. They were in a stalemate. A strange atmosphere pervaded the surroundings, and it was difficult to disperse like the fog of late autumn. Even the superhumans were scratching their heads. It was obvious that it was too difficult for the Tyrannosaurus Rex to become friends with the Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, this wasn't the Tyrannosaurus Rex's fault. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was already 1 in a million on this continent to be able to endure the Tyrannosaurus Rex's pressure and accept the food it gave. It was impossible for them to leave together. Wasn't the Tyrannosaurus Rex making things difficult for the Tyrannosaurus Rex? The superhumans didn't expect that after coming to this ancient continent, what they saw was not only the ruthless killing and plundering between giant beasts, but also the pure love and friendship between carnivorous dinosaurs and vegetarian dinosaurs. This choice was even more heart-wrenching than the pure love movies they watched. Perhaps this was the different feeling that animals brought to people. It was so sincere and natural. It transcended all interests and complicated relationships. It just wanted to be with you. Seeing that the sun was about to set, Xiao Qixi, who was extremely conflicted, thought to herself, "Hurry up and leave. If you don't leave, how can I follow you?" In the end, The patient Tyrannosaurus Rex finally took a step forward. However, it didn't move forward. Instead, it walked towards Xiao Qixi. The Tyrannosaurus Rex stretched out one of its legs in front of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Perhaps it thought that if the Tyrannosaurus Rex bit it, the Tyrannosaurus Rex would agree to go with it. Then let's take a bite. The author has something to say. Actually, this is a very gentle unit, except for the scene of A.O. Daisai hunting. Chapter 201. Looking at the leg in front of it, the little armored dragon was confused. What was the other party trying to do? However, he had already left, but he still came back. This alone was enough to show that the other party didn't want to be separated from him. Xiao Qixi was stunned. He was now more certain of the real identity of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And the leg was extended to apologize? Because he fell and fell, did he think that he wouldn't go with him because he was angry? Xiao Qixi. Huh. Am I such a stingy person? Yes, he was such a stingy person. Fortunately, although A.O. Daisai hadn't awakened its intelligence, it instinctively knew how to coax its pampered partner. Xiao Qixi saw that the other party was so gentle, so he decided to turn the page and accept the other party's goodwill. Therefore, after the two parties stared at each other for a few seconds, the little armored dragon slowly lowered its head. While the Tyrannosaurus Rex was a little nervous, it extended its head and rubbed against the other party's leg. The round horns on the top of its head were like tickles, rubbing against the slightly rough skin of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Not only did it not hurt at all, but it also felt faintly comfortable. After all, the Tyrannosaurus Rex usually couldn't touch the outside of his thigh. Perhaps he thought that the little armored dragon was going to bite him, but the other party just rubbed against him coquettishly. Obviously, the Tyrannosaurus Rex initially thought that the armored dragon was a violent fellow, but in fact, the armored dragon was very docile and wouldn't kill each other like the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The Tyrannosaurus Rex twisted its neck and looked down at the guy who was much shorter than it. A low-frequency sound came from its throat. The superhumans observed the small animals around them and found that they didn't run away in panic because of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's voice. They wrote down in a small notebook. Different sound frequencies represent different moods of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. When it made a happy sound, the animals around it weren't affected. Xiao Qixi missed A.O. Daisai so much that he accidentally rubbed against it for a long time. He stopped embarrassedly and felt that his face was hot. He wasn't even 100% sure that the other party was his boyfriend, so he was a little rash. However, the Tyrannosaurus Rex seemed to be very happy. It made a sound like a cat being stroked, but it was much rougher than a cat's. Lions and bears couldn't compare. He turned around and walked forward. Just like before, he looked back 3 times with every step he took. It was as if he wanted Xiao Qixi to follow him. This time, Xiao Qixi did not hesitate and chased after her with her short legs. Tyrannosaurus Rex had achieved its wish. As it walked, it began to jog happily. This made the little armored dragon behind it suffer. The little armored dragon cursed, hoping that the other party would slow down a little. But to be honest, this Tyrannosaurus Rex was still very young, right? After a short period of interaction, even Xiao Qixi knew that this was not the personality of an adult Tyrannosaurus Rex. The other party's impetuous personality was more like that of an adolescent. It was rather cute. After receiving complaints, the other party finally slowed down. Occasionally, it would turn around to wait for the armored dragon that was advancing at the speed of a turtle. Later, he simply walked behind the ankylosaurus. From this angle, the young Tyrannosaurus Rex could see the ankylosaurus tail. It was a strange tail, different from most dinosaurs. It was not slender, and there was a hammer at the tip of the tail. As the little armored dragon walked, the hammer swayed up and down. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, who was quietly watching the little armored dragon, followed the other party's tail back and forth. Perhaps out of curiosity, it finally seemed to have made up its mind. It slowly bent down and bit the tail with its teeth. It did not use any strength. It was more like a test. Xiao Qixi felt her tail itch. She habitually whipped her tail in the direction of the itch. Suddenly, A dull thud was heard. The Tyrannosaurus Rex's cheek was hit by the Ankylosaurus Rex's hammer. However, it was just like scratching an itch to him. It did not hurt at all. Thus, he raised his head as if nothing had happened and walked seriously. Only Qiao Qixi held the hammer in her hand and panicked for a long time. Did he just hit the Tyrannosaurus Rex's face? God, he did not do it on purpose. But it looked like the other party did not care about it. The superhumans watched the two figures, one tall and one short, leave together under the setting sun. An indescribable sense of comfort welled up in their hearts. The beauty and cruelty of the Cretaceous period. If they did not witness it with their own eyes, then what was the point? The week-long transcendental journey ended smoothly. The two scientists brought back the information they had collected during the week back to the real world. This information was too important. The various images confirmed many of the conclusions of later generations and corrected many mistakes. The most important discovery was the friendship between the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Ankylosaurus Rex. They were grateful to them for adding warmth to the Cretaceous period. They also looked forward to meeting them again on their next transcendental journey. The setting sun pulled the two dinosaurs' shadows long. It could be seen from their footsteps that they were both in a good mood. Qiao Qixi had been wandering here for a week. He had long grown tired of loneliness and searching. Now that he had the unawakened Ao Daisai by his side, he was very happy. But where were they going now? Oh, right. The Tyrannosaurus Rex had been in a stalemate with him for half a day. It should be hungry by now, right? The Tyrannosaurus Rex brought the Ankylosaurus to a small stream. Of course, it was a small stream to them. It was not small at all. Perhaps there were many big fish living in it. Qiao Qixi smacked his lips and imagined the taste of those big fish. He quickly shook his head. No. He was a vegetarian dinosaur right now. What was he thinking about? The vegetarian dinosaur obediently laid down by the stream and drank. His companion, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, also lowered its head to drink. However, its eyes were secretly looking to the side, as if all its attention was focused on the Ankylosaurus drinking water. The first time they had met by chance, it had also been in a similar situation. Who would have thought that in just a few days, they would become companions? The Tyrannosaurus Rex snorted and angrily scared away the surrounding carnivorous birds. Even if the other party was only spying on the fish in the water, it still made him unhappy. In the past, Qiao Qixi would also encounter these birds while drinking water by the stream. However, no matter how angry he was, it was useless. Vegetarian dinosaurs were so unimpressive. Humph. He would never admit that it was because he was short that those birds were not afraid of him. After slowly drinking enough water, the Tyrannosaurus Rex walked step by step to the foot of the mountain where the vegetarian dinosaurs were distributed. It seemed that he was going to hunt because he was really hungry. Qiao Qixi looked up at him. Hey, since the other party is going to hunt, then I shouldn't follow, right? This is difficult. A vegetarian dinosaur is going to hunt with a carnivorous dinosaur. What is this? However, the surroundings were gloomy. Maybe a carnivorous dinosaur would suddenly appear from a certain direction. Let's go. Qiao Qixi thought to himself and quickly followed the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Woo. Can I go hunting with you? Hearing the complaints of the Ankylosaurus Rex again, the Tyrannosaurus Rex patiently stopped and waited for him. This body language, Qiao Qixi, can be understood as yes. Okay. Then he promised that he would never be a burden. At the same time, he felt that this Tyrannosaurus Rex was stupid enough. How could it bring a vegetarian dinosaur to hunt? This operation was to starve him to death. Qiao Qixi was very glad that he was not an ordinary Ankylosaurus. He knew everything about hunting like the back of his hand. Since he decided to follow, he raised his tail and tried his best to avoid making any noise. The Tyrannosaurus Rex next door was the same as him. He tried his best to hide his presence and walked slowly in the night. There was a group of Triceratops at the foot of the mountain. When there was no danger, they liked to disperse. After all, no one wanted to stay in a crowded space, which meant that there was a shortage of food. There were always some brave Triceratops focused on eating and walking away, and they would become the primary targets of the Tyrannosaurus rex. This was talking about the adult Tyrannosaurus rex. In order to save trouble, they hunted a large number of Triceratops all year round. The process may not be so easy, but compared to trying to find other prey, the grumpy Tyrannosaurus rex chose to fight head-on. This young Tyrannosaurus rex probably had the same mentality. He was hungry, and there was such a group of prey near the water, so he decided to rush. Fortunately, he was a smart Tyrannosaurus rex when it came to hunting. He would not rush into the group of Triceratops rashly. Instead, he approached from the edge and stared at a lone Triceratops. The other party was eating grass when he suddenly seemed to hear unusual movements. He raised his head and looked vigilant. Xiao was not sure if it was his fault. Even if he sympathized with this vegetarian dinosaur that was about to become his dinner. But to be reasonable, on one side was a Triceratops that he did not know, and on the other side was his boyfriend. Of course, he would unconditionally stand on his boyfriend's side. What should he do next? Xiao thought a little anxiously and decided to help the other party. After all, he also ate a lot of food in the morning. It's decided. Papa, you stay here and don't move. This hunting operation can still be salvaged. Regardless of the Tyrannosaurus rex's reaction, Xiao walked out and took the initiative to expose his figure. The Triceratops was very nervous at first and made a move to escape immediately. In the end, it found that it was an ankylosaurus. Its combat power was not as strong as his, and it was a vegetarian. The Triceratops' temper suddenly rose because their sense of territory was also very strong. They would never allow other dinosaurs to mix in their group and snatch their food resources. Finding that the Triceratops' attention was all focused on him, and everything was as he expected, Xiao was relieved, and then he sped up. Where to run? Of course, to run back. The Triceratops was fooled by him. It dug its hind hooves, and hot air came out of its nostrils. It roared and chased after him. At this moment, the Triceratops' whole body and mind was focused on the Ankylosaurus rex. He never dreamed that one day he would be tricked by the Ankylosaurus and the Tyrannosaurus rex. When the Tyrannosaurus rex saw the Ankylosaurus running, it was probably stunned for a moment, thinking that the Ankylosaurus rex scared the little Ankylosaurus rex. Immediately, in addition to the desire to hunt, there was a faint trace of anger in its heart. When the Triceratops ran closer and closer, its huge figure appeared in the night. Its two powerful legs stepped on the ground, making dangerous vibrations. The Triceratops, who was chasing after the Ankylosaurus rex, instantly discovered the existence of the Tyrannosaurus rex. It was very difficult for them to stop and turn around. Even if they could stop immediately, inertia would make them temporarily unable to turn around and run away. The Tyrannosaurus rex's fangs were close at hand. After a short consideration, the Triceratops resolutely revealed the sharp and long horns on its head. At the same time, it opened its mouth wide and roared a deafening sound from its abdomen. Almost at the moment when the sound was made, they engaged in a head-on confrontation. The Tyrannosaurus rex's roar also spread across the continent in the next second. Xiao stopped and looked back. With the big and round moonlight tonight, he saw the famous Cretaceous-era scene of the battle between the Tyrannosaurus rex and the Triceratops for the first time. The Triceratops was known as the second brother of the Hell Creek group. Its combat power on land was second only to the Tyrannosaurus rex, and it indeed had the courage to fight head-on. According to scientific research statistics, the success rate of the Tyrannosaurus rex hunting the Triceratops was only 50%. Of course, the chance of the Tyrannosaurus rex being killed by the Triceratops was very small. But isn't this Tyrannosaurus rex still underage? The fluff on its back hasn't been removed yet. It's understandable that Xiao is worried. It's the first time he's faced this kind of dinosaur battle. He tried hard to suppress the fear deep in his heart and his ears that were a little uncomfortable from the sound, and slowly approached the battle circle. He knows that if he wants to be with the Tyrannosaurus rex for a long time in the future, he will have to face all kinds of battle scenes. Today, it's only a Triceratops. It's the best opportunity to gain experience. Otherwise, if he encounters other Tyrannosaurus rex in the future, he can only hide and watch the battle. That's not what he wants. I must adapt to the survival mode of the dinosaur era as soon as possible. Xiao Qixi gritted his teeth and said to himself, while rushing forward with all his strength. The Triceratops, who was fighting with the Tyrannosaurus rex with its back to him, was suddenly attacked from the back. The Ankylosaurus rex's not-so-ferocious teeth would also hurt him. The fear of danger behind him made Triceratops instantly turn around in panic, because in his impression, only carnivorous dinosaurs would attack him, and carnivorous dinosaurs were all terrifying existences. If he was even the slightest bit careless, he would become their dinner. Tonight, he was too careless. From the beginning, he shouldn't have chased after the Ankylosaurus, and he shouldn't have panicked when fighting against the Tyrannosaurus rex. The young Tyrannosaurus rex, who had the upper hand, took advantage of the moment when the Triceratops panicked and opened his mouth to bite the back of the Triceratops, quickly ending the battle. He panted, his 2 rows of sharp teeth, which were more than 10 centimeters long, tightly biting the entire body of the Triceratops. But his eyes were looking at the Ankylosaurus with watery eyes. Why is it here? The smell of blood spread in the air, and the Triceratops was still howling and struggling. The Tyrannosaurus rex came back to his senses and used his terrifying bite force to completely kill the Triceratops. The corpse fell on the grass with a bang. The Tyrannosaurus rex opened its mouth and panted. Its snow-white teeth were dyed red with blood, and under the rendering of the moonlight, it looked very sinister and terrifying. The little Ankylosaurus rex's heart suddenly tightened. Is this the combat power of the Tyrannosaurus rex? A violent Triceratops weighing a few tons was gone in just a few minutes. Not to mention, this is just an underage Tyrannosaurus rex. The Tyrannosaurus rex gasped for breath and looked at him with eyes that were not fierce at all, even if he was also a vegetarian dinosaur that could fill his stomach. Xiao Qixi was not afraid. He forgot the lesson of the past and naturally pulled out a smile, which was to say, bared his teeth. Although his eyes were still watery at the moment, and he had not come out of the situation just now, he was very afraid that the Tyrannosaurus rex would misunderstand him. He was not afraid. In the face of the little Ankylosaurus rex's bared teeth, the Tyrannosaurus rex growled in a low voice and turned his face away, pretending to be frightened. His head paused there for a moment before he turned to look at the Ankylosaurus. Xiao Qixi was speechless, annoying. They looked at each other for a moment, and the interaction before the meal ended. The hungry young Tyrannosaurus lowered his head and began to dissect his food. He also had his own preferences when it came to food. He liked to eat pure meat, did not like to eat internal organs, and especially liked to eat thigh meat. The first time he gave his favorite thigh meat to the Ankylosaurus, even if he knew that the other party would not eat it. This time he did the same thing. Facing the bloody piece of meat, Xiao Qixi shook his head and stepped back. Please let the child go. Eek! I don't want to eat meat. I want to eat leaves, okay? After half a day of torment, Xiao Qixi was also hungry. He did not want to see a bloody scene. So he turned around and faced the Tyrannosaurus rex with his butt and gnawed on the grass in front of him. The Triceratops locusts relied on their large population and always easily occupied the best grassland. The Ankylosaurus rex, with its small population, could only occupy the corners where there was not enough food and resources. Oh, the fresh grass that just grew out is so delicious. The Tyrannosaurus rex stood there with the piece of meat in its mouth, obviously not understanding. It finally confirmed that the little Ankylosaurus rex liked the bitter grass more than meat. Finally, it raised its mouth and swallowed the piece of Triceratops' thigh meat in one bite. It was a pity that Xiao Qixi did not see such a handsome scene. Otherwise, he would definitely be starry-eyed. The author has something to say. The Cretaceous period love story has officially begun. Do can be done, I promise, in the name of Little Bear. Chapter 202. For the rest of the time, the Carnosaur guarded the Ankylosaurus on both sides and tore the body of the Triceratops on both sides to fill its stomach that had been hungry for 2 days. There was no doubt that its appetite was very big. Even if it could swallow an amazing volume in 2 bites, the mealtime would not be over in a short time. What's more, this Tyrannosaurus rex was not rude when eating. It was very strange. Living in the dinosaur era, it had 2 kinds of slow, gentlemanly temperaments, which could be described as good manners. The flesh and the huge bones would inevitably be separated and eaten by him, and during this period, he would not make too much of a frightening sound. There were 2 points of concern, as if he was afraid that the sound of him eating the flesh would alarm the armored dragon. Little did it know that the Ankylosaurus became silly in front of the tender grass. Its attention was all on the food, and it had no extra energy to pay attention to the Tyrannosaurus rex that was eating dinner behind it. It was not that Xiao Qixi was stupid. He was just used to Ao Daisai eating meat. Even if he became a herbivore himself, he would not feel that there was anything wrong with hunting and eating meat. Anyway, Ao Daisai would not eat him, right? Although the grass was delicious, the texture was not as thick as the leaves. If he wanted to fill his stomach, he still had to eat some leaves. When there was no companion, Xiao Qixi could only eat the plants in the low places. Now that he had a tall companion, he walked very sincerely to the Ankylosaurus and raised his 2 hands to poke the Ankylosaurus. When the Tyrannosaurus rex swallowed the food and looked at him, he turned his head to look at the tree next to him, opened his mouth, and smacked it. From this action, anyone could see that he was begging for food. Perhaps the Tyrannosaurus rex understood. He immediately stopped his dinner, walked 2 steps at a time to the tree, picked out the most luxuriant branch, and easily bit it with his sharp teeth. Then he gave it to the little Ankylosaurus. Happiness came too suddenly. Looking at the fresh dinner in front of him, Xiao Qixi could almost foresee the happy life in the future. "Thank you very much," he said silently in his heart. Because of the Ankylosaurus, the young Tyrannosaurus rex experienced the most gentle dinner in his life tonight. After eating, it was already very late at night. The temperature in the Hell Creek Valley dropped a few degrees, and the mountains were covered in fog. It seemed that it would rain tomorrow. Around this time, every night, Xiao Qixi would start to feel sleepy. However, because of the special circumstances today, he still hadn't started looking for a place to rest. His new companion seemed to be thinking about this as well. After looking around for a while, he led the way. Xiao Qixi hurriedly followed after him. He had to admit that he felt more secure now. The whole dragon had become more lively, and even his steps were light. Very good. I can go back to the days where I can roll over when I sleep. Although Xiao Qixi's legs were shorter, that was only relative. Moreover, he drove a 4-wheel drive, so he was actually very fast when he rushed. However, it was a little scary. The surrounding environment became more and more desolate. In the end, not even 2 stalks of grass could be seen. Xiao Qixi wondered if this Tyrannosaurus rex was playing a big game of chess. For example, if it tricked the cute Tyrannosaurus rex into playing in the wilderness, wouldn't there be no one to respond to it? Just as he was thinking nonsense, he seemed to have arrived at his destination. With the remaining moonlight, he could see the dark red soil around him. This place instantly reminded Xiao Qixi of the Danxiao landscape in his homeland. It should be beautiful during the day, but because of the minerals, not a single blade of grass grew here. It was hard to imagine that this Tyrannosaurus rex would choose this place as its nest. Shouldn't a powerful Tyrannosaurus rex choose a place with rich resources? TSK, Xiao Qixi cursed in his heart. He thought that he had hooked up with a tall, rich, and handsome man, but he didn't expect to be a tall, poor, and handsome man who lived in a shabby house. But since he was already here, he couldn't just leave with a straight face and a good-tempered person like him. There were 2 places under the leeward rock wall that seemed to be where the Tyrannosaurus rex usually slept. They had already been slept very well. The Tyrannosaurus rex brought the Ankylosaurus rex here, naturally hoping that it would sleep here. However, he didn't expect that the Ankylosaurus rex was pointing at his residence. As if to demonstrate to the Ankylosaurus rex, the young Tyrannosaurus rex laid down on his side at the edge of the flat ground. Although he weighed a few tons, He did these movements quite nimbly. Perhaps he was tired after 2 days, but after lying down, he stretched and moved his tired limbs. His tail was curled in front of him, almost touching his chest. This was the most realistic daily life of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It felt so unreal, yet so real. It was so close and full of the breath of life, no longer so unreachable. Moreover, it wasn't so mysterious and rare. The Cretaceous Tyrannosaurus Rex couldn't be more ordinary. Other than its high combat strength, it didn't receive any extra benefits. It still had to rely on itself. Xiao Qixi was in a daze for a while, and found that the Tyrannosaurus Rex's eyes were looking at him, as if wondering why he didn't lie down and sleep. Didn't he feel sleepy? The Tyrannosaurus Rex was a little sleepy. Their drowsiness came and went as they wished. In 2 days, they had to arrange about 10 hours of sleep. In short, after eating, they could sleep anywhere. However, he still pulled himself together and paid attention to the Ankylosaurus that needed to be taken care of. Xiao Qixi noticed that the Ankylosaurus Rex had made 2 empty spaces beside him. It should be for him to lie down, but he didn't want to lie down and sleep anymore. In order to let himself lie down and rest, Xiao Qixi dug out 2 beds for himself under the Tyrannosaurus Rex's puzzled gaze. He tentatively turned his body sideways and found that the pit wasn't big enough, so he went back and dug for a while. Finally, the pit was big enough. Xiao Qixi slowly laid himself down in the pit. The moment his back perfectly fit with the big pit, his 4 limbs suddenly stood upright. He finally laid down flat. It felt very comfortable, but he forgot to get 2 pillows. His head felt a little uncomfortable. It was a mistake. Xiao Qixi winked and bent his limbs. At this moment, he accidentally saw his 2 round and thick forelimbs. They looked very similar to an elephant's legs. Thinking that it was fun, he tried to put the soles of his feet together. He couldn't help but exclaim that his flexibility was really good. As he played, Xiao Qixi yawned twice. Tears overflowed from the corners of his eyes, making his eyes look bright and big. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was lying on its side. The moment it saw the Ankylosaurus digging, it was amused. The moment it saw the Ankylosaurus lying down, its eyes quietly widened. In the end, its gaze fell on the Ankylosaurus Rex's cute hands and light-colored belly. Belly? The Tyrannosaurus Rex, who was originally sleepy, immediately raised its head. Perhaps it thought that the Ankylosaurus Rex's belly was exposed because he fell, so it got up to help him. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was very strong. It used its head to push the Ankylosaurus out of the pit, making the sleepy Ankylosaurus Rex feel the world spinning. When he opened his eyes and found himself lying on the ground, Xiao Qixi wasn't angry, because this was different from what he imagined. The Tyrannosaurus Rex could really help him get up. Shaking Abito's head, the Ankylosaurus Rex crawled back into the pit and lay down. It didn't matter that they couldn't communicate. Through his repeated mistakes, the Tyrannosaurus Rex should understand that he did it on purpose. The confused Tyrannosaurus Rex looked into the distance, as if it was a little embarrassed by the scene in front of it. Fortunately, he didn't disturb the Ankylosaurus Rex's sleep after that. However, it was very dangerous to expose one's belly. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was worried that the Ankylosaurus Rex would attack the Ankylosaurus Rex, so he slept nearby. The Tyrannosaurus Rex's body was like a semicircle lying on its side, and its tail was still stuck to its chest. It didn't wrap its tail around the Ankylosaurus Rex because it wanted to protect it. The only place close to the Ankylosaurus Rex was his head. When he opened his eyes, he could see the Ankylosaurus Rex's eyes looking up. The Ankylosaurus Rex was already asleep. Its mouth was slightly open, and its nostrils were snoring rhythmically with the rise and fall of its belly. The Quetzalcoatlus Rex went back to its nest to patrol. When it heard the snoring from afar, it quickly turned around and left. The next morning, the Tyrannosaurus Rex had already woken up and was standing by the side. Seeing that the Ankylosaurus Rex hadn't woken up yet, he lay down again and closed his eyes for a while. Finally, the Ankylosaurus Rex woke up. Its 4 limbs hurriedly gestured in the air, and the clever Tyrannosaurus rex immediately used its head to push the Ankylosaurus rex up. In the Cretaceous period, the Ankylosaurus rex arched up and brought out mud. The flying dust hit the Tyrannosaurus rex's face, but he didn't get angry. Xiao Qixi shook off the dirt on her body and finally focused on the appearance of the surroundings during the day. It was indeed the Danxiao landform, but after being washed by water and thousands of years of wind and frost, this place was even more desolate and strange in the distance. Two black dots streaked across the sky. Perhaps they were the Quetzalcoatlus rex or the Archaeopteryx, but they couldn't see clearly. How could this be a place to live? The Tyrannosaurus rex seemed to be used to it. His steady and huge figure blended into the environment, making people see both strength and loneliness. After being in a daze for a while, Xiao Qixi wagged her tail and followed the Ankylosaurus rex. How could they live in such an environment without companions? But dinosaurs probably didn't have that many emotional needs. As long as there was food and a place to sleep, they could live leisurely for 300 years. The Tyrannosaurus rex walked very slowly, as if to take care of the Ankylosaurus rex's speed. For now, he was still very reserved. He didn't act overly enthusiastic. Usually, he just fed and led them, as if he was raising two pets for himself. Xiao Qixi didn't want to think of it this way, but the déjà vu of raising pets was too strong. What could he do? Boo-hoo. After spending 2 hours, they finally walked out of the wilderness. Xiao Qixi began to think about how to persuade the Tyrannosaurus rex to move to another place. This place was not bad. The surroundings were green and lush, and there were 2 clusters of white flowers growing on the ground. At this time, there were already small insects. Small insects swam between the flowers. Xiao Qixi nose stopped on a white flower and carefully sniffed the scent of the flower twice. The pollen that entered his nose made him sneeze twice. Emotionless, he opened his mouth and ate the flower. There was no movement around. Xiao Qixi was about to look up to see where the Tyrannosaurus rex had gone when he saw the Ankylosaurus rex walk over with 2 clusters of white and green plants in its mouth and place them in front of him. The déjà vu of being treated as a pet surged in his heart again. However, Xiao Qixi accepted it happily. He looked up at the Ankylosaurus rex, hoping that these interesting interactions would quickly awaken his past memories. So he lowered his head and took 2 big bites of the food, eating it with relish in front of the Ankylosaurus rex. The Ankylosaurus rex's mood also improved because of his actions. Its pupils dilated and its tail swayed gently behind him. Although the amplitude was very small, it was difficult to notice if one didn't look carefully. It was really a Tyrannosaurus rex with a cold personality. Because the Ankylosaurus rex loved to eat flowers, the Ankylosaurus rex spared no effort to collect them for the Ankylosaurus rex. The atmosphere on the grassland was full of joy. However, the happy time didn't last long. The sound of 2 huge creatures stepping on the ground came from afar. According to Xiao Qixi's judgment, the creature that was walking over was at least twice the size of Ao Daisai, so it was easy to guess that it should be an adult Ankylosaurus rex. That was too unlucky. Perhaps this was the Ankylosaurus rex's territory, and they were the uninvited guests here. The young Ankylosaurus rex, who was collecting flowers in the distance, also heard the commotion. He blinked and walked behind the Ankylosaurus rex before the Ankylosaurus rex arrived. He used his head to nudge the Ankylosaurus rex, and his pupils had already constricted. Xiao Qixi could feel the Ankylosaurus rex's fear, so he didn't care too much and began to run forward in a panic. The Ankylosaurus rex followed behind Xiao Qixi, walking on both sides and looking back. Although he could run faster, he still kept up with them. He wanted to be the barrier between the Ankylosaurus rex and the adult Ankylosaurus rex. A loud roar came from behind, declaring the Ankylosaurus rex's anger without restraint. Just hearing such a deafening sound made Xiao Qixi's heart beat faster and his limbs turn cold. It seemed that he had underestimated the Ankylosaurus rex's deterrence to the herbivorous dragons. It turned out that this was the true bloodline suppression between natural enemies. Xiao Qixi took the time to look back and was extremely grateful for the love of the young Ankylosaurus rex behind him. The other party was already such a gentle and rare miracle existence. After running for some time, they seemed to have run out of the Ankylosaurus rex's territory. The Ankylosaurus rex no longer chased them, but it continued to make threatening sounds. They didn't care about these 2 points. Even if they weren't being chased, they still didn't stop because it was raining heavily. The Ankylosaurus rex, who insisted on taking shelter from the rain, continued to move forward. Thanks to the strange terrain of the Cretaceous period, they finally had a place to shelter from the wind and rain. The Ankylosaurus rex obviously didn't take shelter from the rain. When the Ankylosaurus rex moved inside and made a cute sound to actively invite him in, he was very slow for a long time. Only later did he step inside. After a short pause, the Tyrannosaurus rex opened its mouth and slowly spat out the 2 small clumps of plants that were left in its mouth. But he didn't look at the armor dragon's eyes, as if this wasn't worth taking credit for, or as if he felt sorry for what had happened just now. In short, the meticulous Xiao Qixi felt an unusual atmosphere. It was as if she was not facing a Tyrannosaurus rex, but a big boy who had done something wrong. This understanding made his nose tingle a little. Unfortunately, they couldn't communicate. He couldn't tell the other party, "You're already very good, very outstanding. I'm very lucky to have met you." But it didn't matter. If he couldn't communicate, he could express it with his actions. First, it ate the plant that the other party had carefully preserved. Then, it moved its body to the side and stuck close to the other party. "Ah, that's right, I have to extend my thighs by 2 points. I can't use my armor to push against the opponent." The thighs of the Tyrannosaurus rex and the Ankylosaurus rex were pressed together. At first, the Tyrannosaurus rex thought that it had occupied the Ankylosaurus's space and very obediently moved away by 2 inches. However, the Ankylosaurus rex stuck close to it again. The behemoth, whose face was wet from the rain, blinked twice and didn't know why it didn't want to move its thighs away. The author has something to say. Bowsy 520 posts. Little Bear AO Zone also wants to post, *3. Chapter 203. Both of them were not completely warm-blooded animals, so their skin shouldn't have any temperature. When they were pressed against each other's thighs, Yelishanda felt like she was experiencing her first love and her body was burning. The only regret was that the big guy standing next to her didn't know what this intimate action meant. "Sigh, big idiot." The strong wind blew the rain to one side, so dense and powerful. If a human lived in such a space, it would be difficult for them to adapt. But all of this was common to Tyrannosaurus rex, so it didn't feel like there was anything to worry about. But from today onwards, he might have understood the concept of hiding from the rain from the Ankylosaurus, and firmly believed that the Ankylosaurus was afraid of rain, so it should hide whenever it rained in the future. Quietly waiting for the rain to stop, Xiao Qixi felt refreshed. There was a lot of oxygen in the air, and every breath he took made him feel refreshed. "Now let's go." The Ankylosaurus made a strange sound to call Tyrannosaurus rex, and he and Tyrannosaurus rex once again embarked on the journey to find food. This time, they didn't dare to look for the lush green grassland, because this kind of resource-rich place was already the territory of other Tyrannosaurus rex. The hot-tempered lords didn't welcome young Tyrannosaurus rex to step into their homes. In other words, the Ankylosaurus and Tyrannosaurus rex would encounter more danger as a partner, because they were too big of a target. If he acted alone, no dinosaur would pay attention to him. Xiao Qixi dragged his hammer and glanced at Tyrannosaurus rex. Before leaving the Red Gobi Desert, Tyrannosaurus rex had at least lived in the suburbs, but now he had become a homeless person. But even so, he didn't want to go back to live in a desolate old place. He wanted to live in a mansion with rivers, grasslands, and fruit trees. The terrain in the valley wasn't always flat, and there were some places that Tyrannosaurus rex could cross with just a lift of his foot, but the Ankylosaurus with a low chassis could only take a detour or use all his strength to climb up. He was very glad that this was a more careful Tyrannosaurus rex, and he quickly realized that the route he was used to was not suitable for the little ankylosaurus. But he was already halfway up, and there was no reason to give up. He went back behind the ankylosaurus rex and used his head to help it. Xiao Qixi stepped on a spot where she could exert strength and immediately pushed herself up to the highest point. She took 2 deep breaths and turned her head to find that this side was also very high. How to get down was another problem. Tyrannosaurus rex shook its head, which had been stepped on, and quickly realized that the little armored dragon couldn't go down. It raised its tail and circled around to the front, letting out a clear cry, and then bent down to lean against the rock wall. Was the other party asking him to step on his body to get down? That won't do. Xiao Qixi can't even think about it. He wasn't a small animal. He weighed 2 tons. If he stepped on Tyrannosaurus rex like this, it would hurt. The Tyrannosaurus rex lowered its head again, seemingly urging him not to be afraid. This was probably the most hardcore consolation in the world. Its penetrative power could be felt within a radius of 10 miles. The other Tyrannosaurus rex's voice would make Xiao Qixi tremble in fear and resist from the bottom of his heart, but Ao Daisai didn't. Perhaps it was because Ao Daisai wasn't trying to scare him in the first place. After a moment of stalemate, Xiao Qixi pursed her lips and then practiced what she should do. Of course, she couldn't completely step on the other party, but she could still use it as leverage. The bottom of this rock wall was an open flat ground. Even if she rolled down, she wouldn't hit anything. She could roll to her heart's content. Xiao Qixi took a deep breath. Her limbs rested on the Tyrannosaurus rex's back for a moment, and then she quickly rolled to the ground. With her limbs curled up, she rolled a few times on the ground, accompanied by the sound of her chirping. Finally, she stopped with her limbs facing the sky. She opened her big, wet eyes and found the Tyrannosaurus rex on top of her head, looking at her curiously. Wait, that wasn't curiosity. The Tyrannosaurus rex rubbed Xiao Qixi's face, which was probably a sign of heartache. Being flipped over, the Ankylosaurus rex felt a little dizzy for a moment. It saw double shadows of the trees in the distance. It was so disgusting. Although this path wasn't smooth, the destination was full of surprises. After recovering, it looked up. It was a sunken basin with many short wild fruit trees around it. Of course, there was also a dangerous swamp. Some herbivorous dragons had been leisurely eating here, but the arrival of the Tyrannosaurus rex caused a small commotion. Some of the herbivorous dragons accidentally stepped into the swamp because they were in a panic. As a result, the surrounding area was filled with panic cries, which made people panic. After a while, the cries gradually disappeared because the dinosaur had already been submerged in the swamp, and there was no trace of it. Witnessing such a barbaric scene with their own eyes was quite offensive. However, Xiao Qixi wouldn't take responsibility for it. Admittedly, it was because he wanted to eat the fruit that Ao Daisai brought him here that the dinosaur died. It can only be said that dragons all had their own lives. The dinosaurs in Hell Creek Valley all knew how dangerous the swamp was, so they moved forward carefully. The Tyrannosaurus rex volunteered to walk in front, testing the perfect and safe path for the Ankylosaurus rex. Of course, the most important thing was that it was flat. Xiao Qixi wasn't an ancient fan, but the tall, ancient trees, the wet swamp, and the huge dinosaurs scattered everywhere. This kind of primitive and natural environment caught his eyes tightly. The herbivorous dragons were disturbed by the uninvited guests, also looked at the Ankylosaurus rex and the Tyrannosaurus rex slowly walking past. Even if they didn't have high intelligence, all dinosaurs could instinctively determine which were carnivorous dragons and which were herbivorous dragons. Perhaps they were puzzled at this moment. Why would a herbivorous dragon be with a carnivorous dragon? Was that herbivorous dragon crazy? As the young Tyrannosaurus rex didn't seem to have any signs of hunting, the herbivorous dragons, who were always docile and slow, gradually let down their guard and continued to focus on their own matters at hand. Xiao Qixi, Papa, who hasn't even returned all of its fur, really doesn't look good. Papa took a fancy to a fruit tree. The average fruit tree was only 3 to 5 meters tall, and the crown of the tree was just enough to reach the young Tyrannosaurus Rex's chin. At first, the young Tyrannosaurus Rex also very patiently looked for individual fruits, but later it seemed to be impatient because the fruits were really too small for him. Looking at the whole tree that was cut off at the root, Xiao Qixi, who had been well educated since he was young, felt ashamed. It was simply too immoral. In order not to waste food, he also ate the leaves after eating the fruit. Just as he was concentrating on eating, he suddenly realized that Papa beside him had disappeared, and he didn't know how much time had passed. Xiao Qixi, who was 90% full, raised his head and looked around. Unfortunately, his altitude was too low, and all he could see were obstacles. But he didn't have the energy to feel inferior. The most important thing now was to find the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Could have lost it? Xiao Qixi blamed himself for being too focused on eating as he anxiously walked through the crowd of herbivorous dragons. If he could ask for directions, he would definitely catch every herbivorous dragon and ask, "Have you seen my Tyrannosaurus Rex?" After walking half a circle around the swamp, Xiao Qixi finally saw a familiar tail, but it was only the tail. It seemed that the other party was standing in the depression. Xiao Qixi was like a child who had been abandoned by his parents. He aggrievedly climbed up and poked his head out to take a look. This series of actions caused him to burp a few times with the smell of wild fruits. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was bent over with its back facing him, eating an Edmontosaurus Rex. When it heard the movement, it turned around. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, who had not had time to adjust its expression, had a ferocious look on its face, and its mouth was full of blood. To be honest, when such a terrifying face suddenly appeared in front of one's face, anyone would instantly faint. Xiao Qixi was the same. Because the impact of the scene was very strong, fortunately, he didn't faint. He was just flustered. On the one hand, he knew that this was Xiao Qixi and would definitely not hurt him. On the other hand, the scene was too scary. He immediately stepped back. The interrupted Tyrannosaurus Rex realized that it was the little armored dragon. Its ferocious and cold eyes immediately changed. It only took a second to go from shrinking to widening. At the same time, it used its tongue to lick the blood around its mouth. It turned out that the little armored dragon was eating too slowly and too focused. It was bored waiting at the side. Coincidentally, an Edmontosaurus Rex that was suitable for hunting appeared, so it followed the food far away. After staring at the timid little armored dragon, the young Tyrannosaurus Rex lowered its head and continued to eat. However, after that, it would always eat 2 mouthfuls and look up to see if the armored dragon was still there. Of course, Xiao Qixi was there. After a short period of adaptation, he had recovered from the shock just now. After all, the Tyrannosaurus Rex recognized him and softened its aura. Was it treating him well? While he was in a daze, the tip of a tail reached over and waved in front of Xiao Qixi's eyes. The tail was very agile. Only the tip of the tail was moving. Xiao Qixi looked up in surprise and found that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was still eating with its head lowered. It didn't even turn around to look at him, but its tail accurately came in front of him to make its presence known. Ah, is this to accompany me, who is bored? Actually, he wasn't bored waiting here, but he didn't intend to reject the Tyrannosaurus Rex's good intentions. Xiao Qixi's eyes followed the tip of the tail from left to right. Finally, he saw the opportunity and bit down. He didn't use much strength. He was sure that this bit of strength wouldn't cause any pain to the Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, the Tyrannosaurus Rex seemed to tense up and slowly turn around to stare at him. The beast's eyes narrowed as if to say, "You're so naughty." Xiao Qixi hurriedly spat out the tip of his tail. She lowered her head and placed her hands in front of her chest, acting like an obedient child. If it wasn't for the fact that his hammer tail was wagging proudly behind him, he would have been tricked by him. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was obviously not unhappy because of this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have continued to use its tail to tease the little armored dragon. A commotion interrupted their flirtatious interaction. It was a group of Nether River raptors who smelled the scent of blood and came to investigate. Before the group moved out, one of the Nether River raptors must have secretly grasped the situation. Obviously, they weren't afraid of a young Tyrannosaurus rex. Xiao Qixi immediately recognized the Nether River raptors when he saw them looming nearby. They were the small, carnivorous dragons. Their forelimbs were also short, but their claws were very sharp. Their densely packed fangs looked very scary. Most importantly, they were very fast. Once they started running, even the Tyrannosaurus rex would be left far behind. Xiao Qixi saw them at night, and only a small group at that. He was still willing to scare them, but he didn't expect them to look so scary in the morning. They were much uglier than the Tyrannosaurus rex. Of course, he wasn't saying that the Tyrannosaurus rex was ugly. The Tyrannosaurus rex wasn't ugly. At least, Ao Daisai was very handsome. The calm young Tyrannosaurus rex ignored the group of uninvited guests. He was still growing, and his appetite was huge. This Edmontosaurus rex was only enough to fill his stomach. The Nether River raptors could only watch. The Nether River raptors didn't dare to attack recklessly with their numbers. It seemed that after confirming that they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the situation, their leader. It seemed that every group would have a leader. It was an inevitable phenomenon. The Nether River raptors who didn't dare to walk out of the forest shifted their gaze to the other herbivores eating in the basin. Not far away from them, the scene of hunting and being hunted was like a daily routine. The docile herbivores who were aloof from worldly affairs fought with all their might against the carnivorous dragons. Although the smaller Nether River raptors had the advantage, they couldn't win with a single strike like the Tyrannosaurus rex. Even if the group wanted to take down the giant herbivores, they would have to make a lot of sacrifices. For example, their companions would fall into the swamp during a tug of war. Fortunately, the light weight wouldn't make them sink in an instant. If their companions were willing to save them, their chances of survival would be greatly increased. The Tyrannosaurus rex and the Ankylosaurus rex had no interest in staying to watch the battle, although they wouldn't consider staying in this troublesome place. Xiao Qixi originally thought that this place wasn't bad, but he overestimated his tolerance. As a docile herbivorous dragon who was aloof from worldly affairs, he wanted to live in a relatively peaceful place. For example, a powerful adult Tyrannosaurus rex who strictly managed his territory and didn't allow any carnivorous dragons to enter. But could the lowly Ankylosaurus rex do that? Xiao Qixi immediately withered. Boo-hoo! As expected, greed was an unavoidable weakness. Even if it was a dung beetle, that wasn't the case at all. If you had one, you would want a second one, all right? He had a lifespan of 300 years and a strong and healthy body, but he was still dissatisfied with his height, damn it. However, it wasn't completely impossible to have an undisturbed territory in the Cretaceous period. Although his legs were short, he had a powerful boyfriend. Xiao Qixi looked up at the Tyrannosaurus rex with sparkling eyes, hoping that the other party would grow up quickly and take him flying. For the time being, there were no powerful young Tyrannosaurus rex who took the timid little Ankylosaurus away from the noisy swamp and came to a relatively quiet pass. There were a few sparse trees around. The Tyrannosaurus rex, who needed to take a few naps every day, found a random place and lay down with a bang. His tail, which hadn't fallen asleep yet, swept around on the ground with unclear meaning. The afternoon sun was very bright, and a few unknown birds flew through the air. Obviously, this was a very peaceful and leisurely afternoon. Even the herbivorous dragons who faced danger at any time liked it very much. Xiao Qixi was embarrassed to go to the Tyrannosaurus rex's side. For a short afternoon nap, there was no need to dig a hole for himself to lie down, so he chose to lie down casually. He very cleverly lay down in front of a clump of green grass and occasionally opened his mouth to take a few bites, eating with relish. In a daze, there seemed to be a behemoth approaching. He looked back and saw that the Tyrannosaurus rex, who was sleeping nearby, was sleeping next to him. He thought to himself, this guy's sleeping posture is really bad. How could he roll to the next door from so far away? The author has something to say. Straight Bear, he did it on purpose. Chapter 204. The days of wandering were very uncomfortable. Even a big guy like them, who weighed a few tons, hoped to have a nest to rest in after dark. Obviously, they didn't have one yet. When they woke up from the unfamiliar pass, the sky was already dark. The Tyrannosaurus Rex shook its head and immediately checked on the Ankylosaurus. When it found the other party in front of it, it stopped there and stared at it with its light golden eyes, as if the other party's existence was the source of its joy. After an unknown amount of time, two coarse Styx river geese flew across the sky, emitting very unpleasant sounds. Xiao Qixi woke up immediately. When he opened his eyes, he saw a desolate and dark environment with strange sounds. No matter how brave he was, he couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Where am I? What's going on? Roar. The Tyrannosaurus Rex raised its head and roared at the geese in the sky, as if angry that they had woken up its companions. So it was two birds. Xiao Qixi blushed, feeling ashamed of herself for being so flustered. She looked around and realized that the sky was already dark. After thinking about it, he looked back and met a pair of light golden eyes. The other party was lying on the ground and looking at him quietly. Damn, because one was standing and one was lying down, their eyes were on the same level for the first time. The Tyrannosaurus Rex no longer had to lower its head to look at his face. But why was it looking at him? Xiao Qixi thought to himself. There's no flour on my face. Also, he felt that he had to investigate the Tyrannosaurus Rex's sleeping habits. After all, the other party was several times his size. It would be terrible if it accidentally fell on him. Xiao Qixi decided to stay away from the Tyrannosaurus Rex when sleeping in the future. He turned his face away uncomfortably from a stare and stretched his limbs. When he looked back, he found that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was no longer looking at him. Great! It was standing up and reaching for the leaves on the tree. Well, it was a big tree. Even the Tyrannosaurus Rex could barely reach it. But this kind of leaf was so big. Xiao Qixi excitedly picked up a big leaf and bit it expectantly. Before he could chew, a bitter and spicy taste spread in his mouth. Ba ba ba! The little armored dragon spat out the leaves. It was so spicy that it was tearing up. How could there be such a spicy plant in the Cretaceous period? Xiao Qixi quickly informed Tyrannosaurus Rex to stop. Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't seem to understand until Xiao Qixi demonstrated how to eat and spit out leaves. This kind of leaf didn't taste good, or perhaps the little armored dragon wasn't too hungry. It was dark, and it was dangerous to wander around in a strange place, let alone stay overnight. Tyrannosaurus Rex simply gave up on the trees within a radius of a few miles. He walked in front of Tyrannosaurus Rex, wanting to bring the little armored dragon home to sleep, although that home was also something he had snatched. Xiao Qixi shook his head and retreated. No, he didn't want to go back to the Gobi Desert. He wagged his tail and shook his head, thinking that he had expressed himself very clearly. Finally, he turned around and looked into the distance. His voice was filled with longing for the future. Even though many of the nearby territories had already been taken over by the Tyrannosaurus Rex, that didn't mean that there were no habitats further away. Young people should be driven. As the new generation of Hell Creek Valley, Xiao Qixi felt that he and Tyrannosaurus Rex should go out and explore more possibilities, instead of being trapped in this small place and being chased around by an adult Tyrannosaurus Rex. At the same time, he was also very curious. Why didn't Tyrannosaurus Rex want to leave this place? Was it because its parents were here? Or was it because Tyrannosaurus Rex felt a sense of belonging to this place? No, Tyrannosaurus Rex wouldn't miss its parents, nor would it have a special sense of belonging to a place. Before the continents were severed by the sea, the dinosaurs on the continents were all roaming around. It was obvious that they didn't have the concept of home. Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't want to leave this place at first, but now that he had the little armored dragon as his companion, he realized that it didn't want to go back with him. So he decided to follow its footsteps. It made a low sound in its throat, as if to say, "Where are you going? It's dangerous outside. I have to follow you." Of course, this was all in Ylashanda's mind, based on his understanding of Ao Daisai. thanked Tyrannosaurus Rex for indulging him. Even if it didn't agree, it only followed and didn't block his path. Chao Chi jumped in front of him, showing that she was full of anticipation for this unknown journey. Tyrannosaurus Rex looked into the distance. Perhaps he knew that the road ahead was very dangerous, especially for an armor dragon that didn't have a strong combat ability. Yes, after a day of interaction, he had already figured out the armor dragon's combat ability. It was very weak, and it loved to cry. Tyrannosaurus Rex was silent for a moment. Then he lifted his foot and headed in the direction that he thought was good. He also whispered to the little armor dragon to follow him and not get lost. Chao Chi simply loved him too much. She swore that she would be obedient from now on and wouldn't cause him any trouble. A helpless Tyrannosaurus Rex and an ambitious Ankylosaurus Rex set off in the middle of the night. However, Yulashanda's ambition only lasted for 2 hours. 2 hours later, it was late at night, and the fog was heavy, and his eyelids were drooping. He was like a primary school student with a regular work and rest schedule. When it was time, he wanted to sleep, regardless of whether the homework given by the teacher was completed or not. Yulashanda was that primary school student. He was sleepy and wanted to sleep. Because he was dozing off and his left foot tripped over his right foot while walking, he finally fell to the ground with a thud. However, he didn't feel any pain due to his thick skin. Instead, he felt that lying on his stomach was really comfortable. His eyelids, which were originally unable to open, were completely unable to open now. Tyrannosaurus Rex walked and walked. Then he turned back and stood in front of the armored dragon that was lying flat like a pancake. He was a little helpless. After he got close to the armored dragon's nose and made sure that the armored dragon was asleep, he wagged his tail and laid down beside the armored dragon. He had a good sleep. An unfamiliar environment was always unsafe. Tyrannosaurus Rex closed his eyes for a while, but he didn't seem to be at ease. He opened his eyes again, and a moment later, he placed his tail on the armored dragon's back. Although he didn't know what it was used for, he seemed to be very satisfied. The high full moon hung high in the sky. Occasionally, clouds drifted by and blocked the moonlight. The night wind blew the leaves, but it didn't affect the 2 dinosaurs that were sleeping soundly. Yulashanda had a dream. He dreamed that he was performing a performance of breaking a rock on his chest on the street. The scary thing was that the rock didn't break. Boo-hoo, he broke. The feeling of horror didn't disappear because he woke up from the dream. Even when he was completely awake, he still felt the rock pressing down on him. When he took a closer look, he realized that it was Tyrannosaurus Rex's tail. This made Chao Chi immediately fall into a daze because he couldn't remember how he fell asleep last night. But that wasn't the point. The point was that he and Tyrannosaurus Rex had developed too quickly. Before they fell asleep, they were clearly respectful and kept a distance. How did they wake up with their limbs intertwined? Chao Chi blushed. He felt guilty for having an affair behind his boyfriend's back. It obviously wasn't. At this time, Tyrannosaurus Rex woke up and moved his tail away from the armored dragon's body. He then looked around vigilantly. It could be said that there was no trace of ambiguity at all. Chao Chi. Could it be that I've crossed the dragon with myself? This place was randomly chosen yesterday. They didn't expect the location to be good. There was a small stream ahead. Where there was water, there would be dinosaurs. Before the adult Tyrannosaurus Rex that occupied this place rushed over to chase them away, they could secretly absorb water and look for food here. There was plenty of time, and they could even take a bath. If they didn't take a bath for a long time, parasites would live on their skin. They should take a bath and bask in the sun while the weather was good. It was easy for Tyrannosaurus Rex to take a bath. It directly walked to the deep water and soaked itself for a while. Then it climbed to the shore and rolled on the cobblestones. After rolling, it went down to soak again. After a few repetitions, it could come up to bask in the sun. It was more difficult for Tyrannosaurus Rex to take a bath. He had to find a rapid stream and lie down to wash his body. It would be even better if he could find a waterfall. The water falling straight down on Tyrannosaurus Rex's body was a comfortable experience for him. Xiao Qixi was very grateful that the lord of this place didn't appear, giving him time to toss and turn the sun. After a full meal, he and Tyrannosaurus Rex left this place satisfied and set off for a further place. After the superhumans went back and adjusted, they came to the late Cretaceous period to observe the dinosaurs again. If there were dinosaurs that they recognized, they could locate them. Therefore, they chose Tyrannosaurus Rex because it left a deep impression on them. They could quickly associate it with its appearance and movements. The result was a pleasant surprise for the superhumans. The cute Tyrannosaurus Rex and Tyrannosaurus Rex were still together. Their friendship was still going on. Currently, the two dinosaurs had left their original environment. They didn't know where they were going. Maybe it was a new habitat, or maybe they were just going out for a walk. While thinking, Tyrannosaurus Rex and Tyrannosaurus Rex encountered some trouble on their way. In front of them was a natural stone bridge. It didn't look far from the opposite shore. The stone bridge looked very sturdy, but it was still full of danger. It would be too risky if they walked over directly. Tyrannosaurus Rex stared blankly at the opposite side. It seemed that it was unwilling to turn around and leave just like that. It had walked for a long time to reach here. Tyrannosaurus Rex was more straightforward. It used its tail to sweep Tyrannosaurus Rex beside it, as if it was asking it to leave and follow it. The little Tyrannosaurus Rex was a little disappointed. It was because of the hard work they had put in. It was afraid that it would follow them absent-mindedly. It went forward and bit the tip of Tyrannosaurus Rex's tail and followed it listlessly. Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't refuse. It seemed that it was quite interesting to have its tail bitten by the little Tyrannosaurus Rex. The superhumans' eyes followed them for a while. Then, they turned to other dinosaurs and creatures with satisfaction. After all, their duty was to observe the entire Cretaceous period. Time flew. Tyrannosaurus Rex and Tyrannosaurus Rex walked through valleys, mountains, and rivers. They also encountered many dangers. They had already walked very far. The first place they came across that was suitable for living was a plain. Everything around it was good, except for an active volcano. Thinking of the natural disasters that often happened during the Cretaceous period, Xiao Qixi didn't want to live next to an active volcano. Therefore, they could only continue their journey. They left the volcano and went north. If they went north, they could avoid the tsunami. Of course, Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't have any idea about this. However, it was very cooperative with the little Tyrannosaurus. As long as the little Tyrannosaurus didn't like a place, it wouldn't insist on staying no matter how comfortable it was. The weather was gradually getting hotter. Obviously, it wasn't the hottest summer season yet. The hair on Tyrannosaurus Rex's back seemed to be making it uncomfortable. Recently, it would rub its back on the ground to make the hair fall off. With Xiao Qixi's help, its tail had fallen off a lot. Only the hair on its back and head were still very strong. It seemed that it would take a while for it to fall off. Tyrannosaurus Rex grew very fast. It was said that it could gain more than 5 kilograms of meat a day. Xiao Qixi was with it every day, so he couldn't tell. After all, 5 kilograms of meat was nothing compared to a few tons. However, he felt that he had grown up. Maybe it was because he had been eating regularly and well recently. He was grateful for Tyrannosaurus Rex's care. One day, when he woke up from a comfortable sleep, a repulsive adult Tyrannosaurus Rex was staring at him from 20 meters away. Xiao Qixi was scared out of his wits. 20 meters was just a step for Tyrannosaurus Rex. It could easily attack him. The reason it didn't come over was probably because there was also a young Tyrannosaurus Rex here. It was also staring back at him. Xiao Qixi. Oh no, it feels like there are 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes fighting over the same prey. Boo-hoo. Perhaps that was indeed the case in the adult Tyrannosaurus Rex's eyes. It was hungry. The nearby place was too poor. It searched for a long time, but couldn't find anything to eat. It was a pleasant surprise to suddenly find an Ankylosaurus Rex. However, another Tyrannosaurus Rex had already set its eyes on its prey. The adult Tyrannosaurus Rex wasn't afraid of fighting with the young Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, the geographical location wasn't good. It was right next to a cliff. If it wasn't careful, it might fall off. After some consideration, the adult Tyrannosaurus rex seemed to have decided to take a gamble. It squeezed through a natural narrow barrier and gave chase. As soon as it moved, Xiao Qixi quickly turned around and ran as fast as he could. He knew that his legs were short. If he didn't run faster, he would be a burden to his companion. However, after running for a while, he realized that his Tyrannosaurus rex wasn't following him. He turned around and saw that the Tyrannosaurus rex had no intention of running away. Not only did it not run away, it even charged forward to collide with the Tyrannosaurus rex. Due to its large size, the adult Tyrannosaurus rex couldn't rush through the barrier in one go. The moment it saw the Tyrannosaurus rex charging over, it let out a powerful roar. In the next second, the two enormous creatures collided into a ball. The rocks around them fell down from the impact. Some of them rolled to the side and fell into the abyss. The roars of the two Tyrannosaurus rexes tore through the sky, reverberating through the valley. Xiao Qixi was stunned. Fortunately, the battle didn't last very long. The young Tyrannosaurus rex relied on its tough attitude and geographical advantage to intimidate the other party. The dizzy adult Tyrannosaurus rex chose to turn around and leave in the end, leaving them with a slightly depressed back. Xiao Qixi was glad that he had chosen the right place to rest. The large Tyrannosaurus rex couldn't enter. He immediately ran over to his friend's side to check if he was injured. Hearing his worried voice, the young Tyrannosaurus rex, who was staring at the back of the enemy, lowered his head. The hostility in his eyes had disappeared. His gaze became gentle and deep, as if to ask, "Did he scare you?" Xiao Qixi observed his face and neck, and heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that there were no wounds. Speaking of which, in that situation, the other party didn't even think of running away. Was it because he was worried that he couldn't run fast enough? With this in mind, Yelashanda, who had always been the palm of his hand, felt a lump in his throat. If this continued, he was going to blow out a nose bubble. "Sorry, I always said that I didn't want to be a burden to you, but I'm still a burden to you." He really wanted to find a place to settle down as soon as possible. He really wanted to. "Oh, it's good that you're fine." Xiao Qixi leaned over and pressed his face against the Tyrannosaurus rex's thigh. His neck and part of his chest were pressed tightly against the Tyrannosaurus rex. He didn't care about anything else. He liked this cute Tyrannosaurus rex. The Tyrannosaurus rex's thigh stiffened. Perhaps it was because he didn't know why the Tyrannosaurus rex was treating him like this. Moreover, the Tyrannosaurus rex didn't give him an inch and wanted a mile. At first, it just stuck to him, but later on, it stood up on its two legs and hugged him with its forelimbs. Oh, it's crying again. It really loved to cry as usual. The Tyrannosaurus rex, didn't know why he thought that this was the same situation as usual. It seemed that he already knew that this little Tyrannosaurus rex was like this from the beginning. The Tyrannosaurus rex realized that from that day onwards, the little Tyrannosaurus rex liked to interact with him even more. For example, when sleeping at night, it would ask him to help dig a hole and take the initiative to hug his tail. Xiao Qixi, yes, because it's cold at night, the tail can still keep you warm. What's wrong? Perhaps the heavens had heard Yelashanda's prayers. Not long after the danger, they finally arrived at a place with rich resources. The important thing was that no Tyrannosaurus rex had occupied this place. As for why no Tyrannosaurus rex had occupied this place, it was because this place wasn't very big. Moreover, they had to pass through a canyon to enter this place. It was probably left behind by an earthquake in the past. Only Xiao Qixi would be interested in this kind of place. Normal Tyrannosaurus rex would be worried that they wouldn't be able to pass through it. Little did they know that after entering this place, there was a completely different world. The rich vegetation and short shrubs looked like they had been growing here for hundreds of years. Some small mammals were breeding here. In the distance, there were also some tall and docile herbivorous dragons living a peaceful life. Xiao Qixi liked this place very much. After walking for more than a month, he didn't want to walk anymore. Perhaps this place was a good place to live. Before he and the Tyrannosaurus rex reached adulthood, it would be very suitable for them to stay here and live. Hey, what do you think? Xiao Qishi looked up at the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Sigh, ever since he was with the other party, his neck was being ravaged every day. The Tyrannosaurus Rex retracted its two short little arms and looked up at the new environment that the little Tyrannosaurus Rex liked. Its eyes were covered with a faint layer of light, as if it was also attracted by the peace and quiet here. The flowering plants continued to bloom in the warm environment. The birds that looked even cuter than the ones outside were draped in gorgeous feathers as they flew in the air. This was indeed a place that the little Tyrannosaurus Rex would like. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was certain of this in its mind. It let out a long roar here, announcing that this place was going to become its and the little Tyrannosaurus Rex's territory. The author has something to say. We have a home now. Chapter 205. Xiao Qishi was originally going to stop this silly guy from making any noise. Wasn't this just scaring the herbivorous dragons here? To be honest, as a herbivorous dragon, he really didn't want to say that he wasn't guilty of taking the initiative to bring a Tyrannosaurus here. The herbivorous dragons here might not have seen a Tyrannosaurus at all. When they heard a Tyrannosaurus roar here, they only paid attention to it for a short while. After a while, they continued with their lives as if nothing had happened, as if they didn't care about what was happening around them. It seemed that they had been living a very comfortable life and weren't sensitive to the arrival of danger at all. Xiao Qishi, should I say that it's a good thing or a bad thing? They were still fine without the native dinosaurs taking care of them. The little armored dragon swept the Tyrannosaurus's legs with its tail and then stepped into the rich plants. Due to the frequent travel of dinosaurs, some irregular paths had formed here, and it was a mess. But even so, the plants still grew very well. The climate of this era was really unique. The little armored dragon walked slowly while raising its head to pick the plants and flowers beside it, thankful that its tongue had taste buds and could taste all kinds of flavors. The Tyrannosaurus, who didn't like plants, followed him quietly, its eyes looking around. On one hand, it was vigilant, and on the other hand, it was looking for a suitable nest location. A flock of birds that had never been beaten flew past the Tyrannosaurus's head recklessly. Fortunately, it wasn't hungry now, and it wasn't a bad-tempered Tyrannosaurus. Otherwise, these inexperienced birds would definitely pay the price. As the saying goes, the higher you stand, the farther you can see. After entering the short bushes, the little armored dragon's vision was blocked. It was difficult for it to determine which direction to look in. But it didn't matter. The attentive Tyrannosaurus walked in front of it and was happy to be its guide at any time. And it habitually used its tail to tease the little armored dragon's mouth, as if it hoped that it would bite the tip of its tail like in the past and not get lost. Xiao Qishi didn't refuse its kindness. The ground was very wet, and the soles of its feet would sink deeply with every step. These were all precious research materials in the future if they weren't destroyed. The armored dragon's footprints were round, while the Tyrannosaurus footprints were triangular. In order not to destroy the Tyrannosaurus footprints, the armored dragon's walking posture was strange. The Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't know what its little friend was doing behind its back. All it knew was that it was being followed. Of course, the damp ground was not suitable for living. After climbing up to his new home, Xiao Qishi realized that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was gone. He was stunned. Where did the huge Tyrannosaurus Rex go? If the Tyrannosaurus Rex went out too, why did he not see it on the way back? Of course, it was because this place was too big. He had to take many turns to eat. Sometimes he would lose track of the Tyrannosaurus Rex after diving into the bushes. The Tyrannosaurus Rex usually slept for a long time. It must have woken up at this time to look for him. Xiao Qishi felt guilty. He immediately turned around and went out again. At the same time, he cried out anxiously. He used all his strength to make his voice travel as far as possible. Not long after he cried out, the Tyrannosaurus Rex's voice rang out in the canyon. It sounded quite far away. Then there was the sound of the mountains shaking. It seemed like a giant creature was running. Dong, 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 dong. Not only did the Tyrannosaurus Rex reply, to the anxious little ankylosaurus, it also ran back to the other party. Its light golden eyes seemed to be asking him, "Are you looking for me?" Xiao Qixi wanted to die when the Tyrannosaurus Rex looked at him with its head tilted. He saw blood and food residue on the side of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's mouth. It was obviously in the middle of eating when he summoned it back. Damn, it turned out that the Tyrannosaurus Rex did not go out to look for him. It was hungry and could not sleep, so went out to look for food. Today's unrequited love, well, it wasn't unrequited love for the other party to be at his beck and call. In the entire late Cretaceous period, he was probably the only Ankylosaurus Rex to be at his beck and call. Sigh, it's fine. Go back and continue eating. The little Ankylosaurus pounced over and rubbed against the Tyrannosaurus Rex's leg. It found that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was still looking at it. It had no intention of going back to continue eating. Xiao Qixi blamed himself even more. So he ran in front and followed a trail of fresh footprints to find the place where the other party had abandoned the food. Only then did the Tyrannosaurus Rex continue eating. However, it would occasionally look at the little Ankylosaurus with a worried gaze. It seemed to be asking, "Are you full?" This was the situation where they couldn't communicate. Dating could only rely on intuition. The little Ankylosaurus stood up on its two legs and spread its forelimbs to reveal its belly, indicating that it was full. It ate a lot of sweet flowers. The Tyrannosaurus Rex knew this. It leaned close to the little Ankylosaurus's mouth and smelled the scent of flowers. It clearly didn't like to eat flowers, but now it was full of curiosity. While the little Ankylosaurus was in a daze, the Tyrannosaurus Rex used the tip of its tongue to lick the other party's cheek. The scent of flowers also lingered there. Xiao Qixi, I'm being a hooligan. Rationally, he felt that it was wrong to speculate about a dinosaur like this. However, he had encountered this kind of thing too many times, okay? Ao Daisai was also an innocent polar bear at the beginning. Later on, didn't it end up like him? Xiao Qixi pretended that nothing had happened. Many things were too difficult to deal with rationally. For example, if the Tyrannosaurus Rex didn't recover Ao Daisai's memories, would it still be Ao Daisai? Of course, after spending more than a month together, he was almost certain that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was Ao Daisai, who had been with him for 5 lifetimes. Let nature take its course. In any case, the other party was only kissing his face now. Looking at their sizes, Xiao Qixi relaxed. It seemed that kissing was the most intimate thing they could do. The two dinosaurs slowly walked home after eating their fill. The tall and huge Tyrannosaurus Rex collected some flowers on the way home. His 2 short hands couldn't be used to hold things, so he bit the flowers in his mouth. He was very careful. He only bit the branches lightly and didn't destroy the shape of the flowers. Perhaps when he got home, he would give all these flowers to Little Armor Dragon. Xiao Qixi's heart was rippling. He thought to himself, why is a Tyrannosaurus Rex being so romantic? Don't you know that this is very funny? In fact, his heart was overflowing with sweetness. Look, even if he reincarnated, he still loved the little bear Yulashanda that was engraved in the depths of his soul. It had nothing to do with what species he was, and nothing to do with the genetic instincts given to him by God. In front of the powerful Ao Daisai, these were all farts. However, after the sweetness, there was a touch of sadness and regret. The late Cretaceous period was so exciting. If Ao Daisai was still here, it would definitely be full of interest in this world. It would also be sincerely happy that it was a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Woo-woo. When he got home, Tyrannosaurus Rex really did give the colorful flowers to Little Armor Dragon. The delicate boy Yulashanda put the flowers in a small hole. When he wasn't hungry, he would look at it and eat it when he was hungry at night. Next, he had to consider where he would sleep. Where was the best place to dig a hole? The hard rock didn't give him a choice. He could only choose a few ready-made holes to work on. Looking at a shallow hole, Xiao Qixi looked at it, then turned his head to look at his tail. He didn't know which was harder, the hammer on his tail or the rock. It turned out that he was inflated. No matter how hard a dinosaur's bone was, it couldn't be compared to a rock. After hammering twice, Xiao Qishi immediately closed his eyes. Forget it. Forget it. Let's find another one. He was very lucky to find a place with a relatively soft texture. However, this was also a burden for his claws because he didn't have any claws to speak of. Little Armor Dragon used its head to push Tyrannosaurus Rex's body to the place where it wanted to dig a hole. It babbled and asked for help. The two dinosaurs communicated for a long time. Tyrannosaurus Rex seemed to have finally understood Little Armor Dragon's intention. He was very willing to help the other party dig a hole. The author has something to say. The noon update is a little short. The evening update is 2 o'clock. He threw the leftovers on the ground and seamlessly moved the stones. Under the completed wall, the Little Armor Dragon was also busy rolling the stones around. Of course, these stones of suitable size were all of the same size that Tyrannosaurus Rex begged its boyfriend to help it. Xiao Qishi felt that he was too much of a busybody, and the other party had a good temper. The author has something to say. Yes, your boyfriend has a good temper. I'm envious. If one did not observe carefully from the outside, one would not be able to tell that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was hiding an armored dragon. Xiao Qishi's hammer was the only thing that did not feel cold, so his tail was often left outside by his master. However, the Tyrannosaurus Rex was very thorough. It would move his tail in every time. Fortunately, the wind did not blow every 2 or 3 days. Basically, it only blew for 2 or 3 days a month. When the wind died down, they continued on their journey. In order to comfort the Little Armor Dragon, the Tyrannosaurus Rex would dig up a radish for it to calm down. After a month on the road, they stepped into a warmer area. Many herbivorous dinosaurs stopped moving forward one after another. Xiao Qishi looked around. The surrounding resources were still not that rich. In front of them was a mountain range. The peak of the mountain was covered in white snow. It blocked the cold air like a huge barrier. The special geographical location made this place relatively warm. He felt that they could still move forward. Some of the more diligent herbivorous dinosaurs also insisted on moving forward. Their choice could not be said to be right or wrong. Of course, moving forward could lead to better food and resources, but it was also more dangerous because there were definitely many carnivorous dinosaurs eyeing them. But sometimes, in order to survive, there was no other way. Xiao Qishi also thought of this. His original intention was to find a remote place to settle down, but his dear Tyrannosaurus Rex did not seem to have any concerns in this regard. Finally, they saw green grass and an abundant water source. Xiao Qishi told himself that this was the place to avoid the cold. The Tyrannosaurus Rex's eyes lit up when it saw the emerald green. This meant that its little armored dragon could eat grass. It was very happy. Suddenly, the roar of a carnivorous dinosaur came from the valley. It startled Xiao Qishi, who was nibbling on a bush of plants. He paused for a second, then continued to taste the delicious food that he had not eaten for a long time. It was inevitable that a battle would occur when they occupied the advantageous resources. Looking at the Tyrannosaurus Rex, who had grown much taller, he felt that they were ready. Xiao Qishi, who was full of fighting spirit, suddenly realized that he was like a sheep that had been set free, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex was the owner of this sheep, Tui Tui. After he was full, the Tyrannosaurus Rex took him to find prey. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was also very hungry. Its body fat had dropped significantly over the past month on the road. To put it bluntly, It had lost a lot of weight. The Tyrannosaurus Rex had very strong endurance. When it was hungry, it would not be like Xiao Qi, who immediately became listless and could not move. The Tyrannosaurus Rex did not eat for 2 days and was still fine. This Tyrannosaurus Rex was attracted by the smell of blood. It obviously felt that the owner of the prey wasn't that strong and wanted to intercept it. It didn't expect that there would be an armored dragon beside this young Tyrannosaurus Rex. It could be seen that the other party was a little stunned for a moment. The moment he saw the unfamiliar Tyrannosaurus Rex appear, Xiao Qishi's first reaction was indeed to run. After all, it was his natural enemy. However, his boyfriend stood in front of him without hesitation, making him full of fighting spirit and wanting to protect him. The almost adult Tyrannosaurus walked out from behind his boyfriend and stood firmly beside him, assuming a fighting stance. The author has something to say. In order to defend my boyfriend's food charge, you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.